This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. Lots to get to today after a pretty disappointing loss last night to the Detroit Red Wings for our Winnipeg Jets. But we will move on. No bones at the All-Star game. I'll be straight. I'm really disappointed. Was disappointed in the way the team came out last night. Obviously, very disappointed in the result. And it's really unfortunate that a guy that has done so much that really deserved to have his first trip ever to an All-Star game won't be there. That being said, we're at the halfway point in the season. There's lots to get to both on last night and the first half of the year. And we will do that with Murat. I know goaltending's been a topic as of late, which isn't that often the case around Winnipeg. Marty Biron's going to jump on, get a little his thoughts on where the Jets are right now, their first half of the season, and look ahead to tomorrow's game with the highest scoring team in the league, the Buffalo Sabres. Should be a lot of fun. Great to have you with us. Bomber fans, be sure to stick around, though. A little later on, we will have a one-on-one, a little off-season update from Kyle Walters, Bombers general manager, and you're definitely going to want to hear this. So let's get to it. First things first, a big thanks to everyone jumping on the stream today with us live on YouTube. And, of course, everyone making us a part of their day on the podcast a little later on. And, of course, we've got to give a big shout-out to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day, including Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Little Brown Jug, Canadian Club Whiskey, Culligan Water, Vita Health Fresh Market, Wallace & Wallace, Consolidated Supply, F Apparel, Manitoba Battery, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, our friends over at Knott. And we will be announcing a little later on today the December winner for our Unsung Hero program with Wallace & Wallace and Jets defenseman Josh Morrissey. But let's get right to it. Michael Remis joins me now. And Remo, that was, listen, it's, I guess if you had told me at the beginning of the season that I would be really bummed about a single loss to Detroit and the Jets would be 3 points out of first place at that midway point of the year with a game in hand on the Dallas Stars, I would have laughed if you had told me that. That being said, considering, what we talked about, what Rick Bowness has done so far, I know he didn't want to admit to it, but it was just disappointing all around. The way the team came out, the way they played. Connor Hellebuck had a rough night, and a very, very winnable game ended up being a 0 in the points column, and that has cost Rick Bowness a trip to the All-Star game.
Yeah, that was a big story on the show yesterday, and now I'm on the NHL.com website. The number 2 story among headlines, coaches for the 2023 NHL All-Star Game revealed, and I
don't want to talk about it.
I'm like in pain. So that was like a playoff game, like the level of emotion you felt while wanting Rick Bowness to get to the All-Star game. I'm flipping, the game ends. I usually watch the Jets YouTube stream, whatever post-game, legal curve post-game, Penny Rennie, or but I didn't. I switched over to the Dallas game. I was like, okay, Islanders, come on in regulation. You can do this. And they did not, went to overtime and I turned it off. I was like, crap. It
was so close too. I mean, I don't know if you caught the last 10 seconds of that game. Oh my God. I mean, a great setup on a 2-on-1. Hey, credit to Jake Ottinger. He made the save last night. And, that there wasn't many saves. I shouldn't say there wasn't many. There was some big saves. Ville Husso, I thought for a guy that gave up 5, he made some 10-bell saves. And that was what was so frustrating and confounding, I think, about yesterday's game. Despite the fact that the Jets came out as poorly as they did and were down 3-0. I mean, honestly, until that empty netter went in to make it 7-5, there wasn't a minute where I didn't think that game was fully winnable for the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, it certainly was, I guess, a fun game to watch. I mean, if you were a fan in the building, much like the game against Vancouver on Sunday afternoon. I mean, if you like goals, there was a ton of them. There was some ridiculous offensive chances on both sides of the game. But the bottom line is the Winnipeg Jets got here by not playing that way. And I know we'll hear from Bones in a minute. I don't know if you guys took it the same way, and maybe I was a little bit more geeked about the thought of Bones going to the All-Star game, but man, that was a very disappointed head coach afterwards. Often with some of the games, he'll point out and really get to what he hated about the game. They were almost moving on right afterwards, realizing the opportunity that was lost. And again, I know maybe it's silly. We're talking about a personal accolade, but this is a guy that's done so much to turn around the fortunes of this hockey team. And I think the collective psyche of the fan base, it would have been amazing to see him get that opportunity. And it was right there on a silver platter for the Winnipeg Jets. And because they strayed so far from the blueprint that had got them to this point in the season, unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's too bad. I think we can, just look back at the first half and say this is a total success. And I agree. Like if you said to anyone here, hey, the Jets will be in second place at the half with a chance at first if they get a win, and they don't. I mean, I think you would take that any day of the week here. So, here, I had the giveaway running from yesterday. Stop it. But you look at yesterday's game, you on Money Puck Hustler, the deserve to win-o-meter, they have the Jets at 77% and Detroit at 22%, and it was all the first couple minutes. I mean, these chances, these guys are in the, making cross-crease passes that are getting through. Guys in the slot just, taking shots with uncontested. Hellebuyck was in a tough spot, and they just chased the game the whole time. And just when you thought they were going to come back and tie it, you'd take a penalty or you'd fail to have a clear or something. You'd go down for a rush, a 2-on-1, make a pass, puck bounces off the boards, back the other way for a goal. So it just seemed like every time the Jets were close to tying it, and they were within one goal, three separate times, 4-3, 5-4, and 6-5. They just couldn't quite get there. And I never felt, Hustler, even when it was 3-0, that they were out of it. Flip the channel. Pittsburgh was down 3-0 to Vancouver and came out and won. What was that game? 6-5 yesterday. So no lead is safe in the NHL. I've seen it across the league, and anyone come back, the Jets certainly can. But it was the defense, and it's 2 games in a row now against inferior teams where the defensive structure just isn't what it's been earlier on this year.
Yeah, and I mean, when you consider the way that the team played against the Tampa Bay Lightning to start off last weekend to make it 4 wins in a row, and then you looked at this schedule coming up, I mean, this was a real chance for the Jets to make hay. And listen, they won the game on Sunday, but I mean, listen, if they're going to play like that, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. You're going to have a tough time winning hockey games consistently. And then combining it with, I mean, listen, Connor Hellebuyck didn't have a great game. I don't think there's anyone that's going to say that. Now, listen, he wasn't put in great situations on some of the shots that went in on him. But the funny thing about it is, we talked about how poor they were defensively. There were only 22 shots on net last night. The bottom line is, though, the ones that were going on Connor Hellebuyck early were from very dangerous places and situations. And the next thing you know, the team was down 3-0 and fighting an uphill battle throughout the night. All that being said, though, I will say, and I kind of mentioned this before, I mean, it'll drive coaches crazy. But holy smokes, did they throw everything in the kitchen sink at Ville Husso through the next couple of periods. And, it's kind of funny. Those deserve to win meters can be, listen, they're based in a lot of things that I think, more often than not, we'll say, this team is going to win the hockey game or not. But listen, you combine the opportunities that the Jets gave up with an off night for Connor Hellebuyck, which is really disappointing, I'm sure, especially for him, considering he was back there. And from all accounts, there was a ton of Jet fans connected to 37 and Kyle Connor as well last night. But for all the waves of offense and the chances that the Jets were creating in the other end, it just seemed like the minute it went the other way, it was going into the Winnipeg Jet net. And there were some things that were completely uncharacteristic. Certainly Connor Hellebuyck's normally better than he was last night. But man, Remo, if there is one play that maybe speaks to the weirdness of last night's game and things you don't expect to see, Adam Lowry on the PK, handing the puck over to Morris Seider at the end of the second period, when the team was had battled back to 4-3, was an absolute backbreaker to make it 5-3. And then boom, Nikolai Ehlers scores 33 seconds into the third period, and it's game on again. But there were plenty of things that hopefully were aberrations and outliers last night. But I think everyone will agree, and we'll hear from Bonus in a second, that ain't the blueprint for the Winnipeg Jets to continue where they are in the standings in the Central Division.
No, and they had so many shots, and just looking, I don't pull these up too often on this show, but here's Money Puck with their shot map. The Jets, so many shots around this slot area, and the Red Wings, it's just like far apart, not many. So Ville Husso, give him credit. He was awesome. I'm just thinking, I see people mentioning Chet, Neil Pionk hitting the post, close to the end. They're just chance after chance, and they couldn't score. And, it's tough. I'm not going to win every game. They won 5 in a row before that. It would have been great to get 6, but they didn't. And we'll move on to a tough one in Buffalo. I do have to say, we should have seen this one coming, Hustler. We got all hyped up about the Jets having dinner with Andrew Kopp the night before, about
Are you sure he didn't drug them?
Yeah,
homecoming. Are we sure there wasn't some sort of...
Ville Heinola was supposed to play and called in sick around 4 p.m., so I don't know what happened there, although it seems like everyone's sick. We heard Mike McIntyre on the show. Kevin Sawyer didn't have much of a voice last night, so I don't know. And they said Stenlin is ill. It seems to be going around. But we should have known. We remember in Minnesota early this year, I think Sandberg had his whole family at the game. We talked with Minnesota Mafia, and they laid an egg there. And yesterday in Detroit, Hustler, Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuyck homecoming. They have dinner with Andrew Kopp. Connor Hellebuyck's second grade teacher is putting on Twitter that she's there in a Hellebuyck jersey. Just couldn't handle the pressure of his second grade teacher being there, I guess. So look, I joked before the show, if that game was in any other city other than Minnesota or Detroit, Jets get 2 points and Bones is headed to the All-Star game, right?
I don't know. Do we have to maybe some new team rules banning families and friends from games? I'm not.
I was listening to Kenny and Rennie, Hustler. Ken said the family room was overflowing. He couldn't even get in there. Look, this should be a workplace, Hustler. I don't have family in here waiting for me after the show.
Yeah. Well, you're probably not too far away. Obviously, we're joking about that, but that just leads to the although. When you look at that, that Minnesota game earlier was maybe the worst train wreck of the entire year. But yesterday, I think that Connor probably had a lot of things going on in and around the game, which happens. Obviously, he's going to get the start. And I was thinking about this, Reem, earlier in the game last night, like when he had, I guess at one point, it was 4 goals on 9 shots. More often than not, it doesn't matter who you are, you're getting the hook in that game. But I think because of where it was, because of the fact that Hellebuyck had the last game off, I don't think Rick Bowness was ever considering pulling his all-star netminder. But that being said, he'll probably be the one that's the most upset with what happened last night because, while some of the goals were just great shots from, tight angles that, you have a tough time blaming the goalie for, there certainly was a few, especially in big points in the game when the team was trying to battle back that ended up going past him. And overall, I think everyone knows I'm the biggest Hellebuck backer around. He's going to be fine. But for that game, that night, that scenario, disappointing for all people involved. The other thing that I'll say about the Jets, though, as much as it sucked at the result and what happened out of it for Bones, maybe it's a good thing they didn't win that game. Because the bottom line is the Winnipeg Jets need to get back to the way that they played for the better part of the first 40 games if they want to win and win consistently, and should be able to handle a team like the Detroit Red Wings. And to start to get down and then essentially play 80s Oilers fire wagon hockey for the next couple of periods, while very fun and entertaining to watch, is not a way you're going to win in the playoffs, and is not a way you're going to win consistently. So, I mean, they did get away with one a little bit, how loose the game was against Vancouver on Sunday. But you don't want to get in the habits and feel that you can do that each and every night. Because let's face it, it's fun. It's fun to score a ton of goals. It's fun to always be high-flying, freewheeling. The basis of the Winnipeg Jets' improvement this year has been on more responsible defensive play, following up, backing up your teammates, and at times that was lacking last night, and that's the reason why they lost. And hopefully that's a hard lesson that this team learned last night, and it'll be much better, because I'll tell you what, the Buffalo Sabres know how to score goals. And if they come up and play the way they did last night, we could be talking about another over, shall we say, in the game comfortably. And it's not going to be easy for them to win. Of course, Pittsburgh, as you mentioned, came back they were down 3-0 early. They did battle back and ended up winning that game 5-4 against Vancouver. So a couple challenging games on back-to-back nights coming up. And you really do hope that the Jets can come out in Buffalo and sort of get back to the blueprint of what has made them successful this year, because we haven't seen a lot of that the last couple nights.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because, you think you're playing in for your teams. You can play loose, score. I'm not sure. I mean, offensively, they played great. As we said, we talked about all the shots that they had, all the chances. They could have very well tied it, but it was in their own end where the mistakes were made, and a couple great A's, and they were in the net. So, look, Leslie in chat says, hey, I'll take a win 5, lose 1 any day. Yep. We're not here saying the sky's falling, or we're not here having Marty Biron and saying, how can you fix Connor Hellebuck? That not at all. It was a tough game, and you'll move on. And Buffalo's no slouch either, as we talked about how well they can score. And did see people in chat. Eric Comrie started the other day. Will we see Eric Comrie revenge game narrative? So they'll turn the page, look to move on, and hope to be better.
Yeah, I guess Comrie just got activated, so he certainly will be a possibility. Jay Miller in chat says, "Come on, Huss, talk these WST chatters off the ledge." LOL. Honestly, I was hoping some of you might be able to do the same thing to me, because full disclosure, Remis, I was so bummed about the result of that game last night. I mean, and this just goes back to, I think, the respect and how thankful I am, and I think many of you are, for this season that we've had, considering what was expected, what could realistically be expected, and so much of that was for Rick Bowness. And when I heard those interviews yesterday that Bowness had never been to an All-Star game, just thought that would have been so great for him personally, as well as the organization. Would have been a great example of what's turned around. That being said, maybe people sleep on the Jets a little longer, but they're going to need to get back to what has made them a team that's been challenging for first place throughout the first half. Let's hear a little bit from Bowness after. And as I mentioned, he just sounded dejected afterwards. And I think that probably encapsulated much of the feeling of most of the fan base, considering what was on the line. Although in the big picture, this is more a personal accolade, but someone that really deserved that personal accolade, as I'm sure most of you will agree. Here's Bowness just talking about the game last night.
We gave up some chances early that we never give up, and we did tonight. It was their night. The puck was going in the net for them, so we had more than enough chances to win the hockey game. We did. We had 85 shot attempts. We had a ton of scoring chances, even at the end with the goalie out. He made some big saves for them, so give him credit.
All right, so there's Rick Bonus, and and I will say this about the team. And I don't know whether you would feel this, Reem, but we had said I'm sure the players are very much knowing what was on the line last night and what was at stake for their head coach, and it really did seem. I mean, the push that the Jets had after they got down and kept on giving one up and bouncing back was. I mean, it was fun to watch. I mean, those games, I mean, listen, when the Winnipeg Jets are flying and really clicking on all cylinders offensively, they're an absolute handful. And Detroit was hanging on for dear life for the better part of the last couple of periods. What was unfortunate, though, was when things didn't go, there was a quick breakdown. It seemed to go back the other way and go in. And I think that was a really disappointed hockey club as well, considering what was on the table, what was at stake. And everything that they did, as Rick mentioned, it was a terrible start. A few got in, but man, did they push. And let me just say, or maybe we'll talk about some of the better performances in a minute. But there were a few guys that really did step up late in the game, and really not even late in the game. I mean, after they got down early, that I thought played very well. But of course, Connor Hellebuyck had a rough night. I mean, 22 shots, 6 goals going in. I mean, that's going to happen maybe once a year for a guy like Connor Hellebuyck. And here's what Bones had to say about his starting netminder last night.
Yeah, hey, listen, he's a battler. He's our guy, and he's won us a lot of games this year, and he's going to win us some more. So there's time. Again, we could have scored enough goals to win that game tonight. Right. Simple as that.
Rick, how do you get back to those good habits in terms of your structure? Especially at the start of the game.
Yeah, well, we'll tighten it up. We'll address the issues that we saw tonight that we didn't like, and we'll get ready for Buffalo.
All right, there's Bones, Rick Bonus. All right, we will have plenty more on this game tonight, and we're going to look ahead to the matchup with the Buffalo Sabres tomorrow with our pal Marty Biron in just a second. And we're also going to let you know who our Wallace & Wallace unsung hero is. We'll do that after Marty jumps on the program. But I have to thank our friends at Consolidated Supply for their great support of WST. We're looking ahead to 2023. I can already picture the golf courses opening, getting out on the links. And hey, whether you're thinking about a golf cart, whether you need irrigation for your property, whether you want to get some artificial turf and maybe build that dream putting green in the backyard, Consolidated Supply is there. Not to mention incredible outdoor kitchens, hot tubs, and more. Find out everything Consolidated can do for you online, cte.ca, or pop down and visit Spicy Joe and the gang at 1395 Niagara Road East. Our friends at Vita Health Fresh Market, of course, are ready for 2023. Featuring great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, and Winnipeg's largest assortment of local products, too. And while so many people are battling colds and sore throats and are sick, it's never been easier to battle those things with Colflex Oregano Spray. Been seeing amazing comments in the chat for people that regularly use Colflex Oregano Spray. Made locally by Initech Nutrition, Colflex Oregano Spray helps relieve coughs and sore throats and helps to maintain immune function. Get yours today at any Vita Health location. And if you are celebrating Sober January or Veganuary, you'll find a great selection of non-alcoholic beverages and vegan and plant-based options. Vita Health Fresh Market, empowering people to lead healthy lives. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. All right, one of our favorites returns to the program for the first time in 2023. A belated Happy New Year to you, Marty Biron. What's up?
Happy New Year to you and yours as well. What's up is the Sabres have lost 2 in a row. Disappointing home and back-to-back home dates against the Flyers and the Seattle Kraken. But at least the Sabres have given us something fun to talk about. And I've been doing a little bit of Jets coverage as well, and I've loved what I've seen out of the Jets. So I can't complain. Hockey's been fun to watch and good to me.
Well, you know what? If you had no skin in the game last night, it would have been a very fun watch of that Winnipeg-Detroit game because, I mean, man, there was a ton of offense. I mean, the Winnipeg Jets were relentless at trying to battle back from that 3-0 lead. Ironically, and there's not very often ever that we're talking about an off night for Connor Hellebuyck, but in his homecoming, he wasn't his usual Vezina Trophy level self, and the Jets ended up walking away without 2. The big conversation around here, Marty, though, has been that the Jets have sort of gotten away from the blueprint that has made them as successful as they've been this year. Everyone knew they needed to be better defensively this season, and they really have done that. Just that game against Vancouver on Sunday afternoon and the game last night looked nothing like some of the games before. And I guess that'll happen in the middle of a long season.
That will happen, and you're going to have some off nights. And obviously, I think last night defensively, it was an off night. Offensively, the Jets created a ton, right? I mean, even New Zealand alone, the coach of the Red Wings said our best player was Ville Husso. Despite giving up 5 goals, he said our best player was our goaltender. So that's because the Winnipeg Jets created a ton. And you also have to know that, look, they've gotten 4 players back, right, for the last 3 games with Ehlers, Wheeler, Perfetti, and Schmidt, right? So some of the parts of the game is going to need some adjustment, but the creating has not been an issue for them. So I look at, sometimes around the National Hockey League, there's some nights that it doesn't make sense. I remember earlier this year, Seattle won a 9-8 overtime game against the LA Kings. The LA Kings did not let that bother them. Now, they made a change in goal with now Phoenix Copley being their guy, getting called up. But I think what we know in Winnipeg is Connor Hellebuyck's had a fantastic season. He's more of a structured goaltender. And in a game like last night, where maybe you needed a little bit more athleticism, and I'm not saying Hellebuyck's not athletic. He's athletic in his own way, but he's not Vasilevsky or Shesterkin or Allmark athletic with the split. He stays very much in control and compact. There was a few of them last night. I wish he could have exploded with a big leg save or a split save or whatnot. That's not him though. So he was off on his marks a little bit last night. It showed, but offensively, the Jets played really well.
Yeah, I mean, no one's doubting the Jets' ability to score goals. There's no doubt about that. It's the way they started and getting down in a hole like that, which you don't want to be. And listen, Marty, for those of us, myself included, closer to the team that, hope for the best for the Jets, what was really disappointing was the fact that, a win and Rick Bowness for the first time after over 2,600 games on the bench would have been going to the All-Star game. And that was disappointing, I'm sure, for a lot of the players as well. But big picture, I know you've mentioned you've been on some Jets broadcasts. What a first half of the season, and what a coaching job Rick Bowness has done. I mean, I remember we were talking in the offseason about what we heard from some of the players at the end of last year, how disappointing last season was for the Winnipeg Jets. And a lot of word about, the culture of this team being broken. He has done as incredible a job as I can remember in the National Hockey League, and interested in your thoughts on this turnaround in Winnipeg so quickly.
Yeah, Rick Bowness has been around a long time. And listen, I've always respected him, from his days back to the Ottawa Senators. And look, that's a long time ago, but I always I've kept an eye on his path and what he's been able to do, and also as an assistant coach, because people always look at the head coach, but the assistant coaches are so important, and what he's been able to surround himself with a really good staff in Winnipeg has helped, right? I know Scotty Arniel really well. He coached me a couple of times, and I know that he's helping in that way. There's so many great people behind the scenes that to me make a difference. But okay, so let's look at what Rick Bowness did coming into the Jets this offseason, right? Stripping Wheeler of the Sea. That was supposed to be the hot topic. Like, this room is not going to be able to overcome a tough decision to strip somebody of the captaincy. This room has responded extremely well to having leadership internally. Despite having letters or not on your jersey, you need to be able to show up with leaders. They've been able to do that. The injuries, right? Nick Ehlers played 2 games, then missed, I think it was 30 or more. Now has played the last 3. You don't overcome missing a player like Ehlers easily unless you have good structure, unless you're able to push the right button, unless you have depth. And I think Rick Bowness has been able to use the depth of the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, I remember last year, Janssen Fjallby got picked on waivers by the Sabres, and then there was some immigration issues, and then was put on waivers again, was basically gone to Washington again. And it was one of those players that Well, he bounces around, but probably will never be a figure in the NHL. Well, he's found a spot with the Winnipeg Jets, and I feel like he's added the depth that they wanted. And he's not just the only one. There's a lot of players that are filling in that role. So I really believe the Jets, and funny enough, I've been burned the last few years, always hyping the Jets and always saying the Jets are that team. They're going to go to finals. They're one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And they always fell short. So this summer, I vowed to not talk about the Jets at all this year. And now they're making me talk about them because of what they've been able to do. So that's a good feat in itself right there.
Yeah. Listen, everyone appreciates that. I think we're the same thing too, because listen, this team legitimately had big expectations over the last few seasons. And, pretty much since the midway point of the 2018-19 season had been going in the wrong trajectory. And, Bonus through a number of ways has completely turned this thing around. And that's sort of why that, the loss last night, I think from a fan standpoint was disappointing because of what he deserved. All that being said, though, this has been, as you kind of pointed out, I mean, a great turnaround. They're getting the most out of their top players, but I'm glad you brought up Axel because Johnson Fjallby is part of a number of guys that, to be honest, weren't really on the radar at the beginning of the season. And then when you add in the injuries that the Winnipeg Jets went through from November and December, Marty, a whole bunch of players stepped up, playing above where they would normally play, in the lineup maybe when they wouldn't normally have been, called up from the American League to the National Hockey League, and they survived that month of December, and then everyone comes back at once. It's unique, and this doesn't happen very often, Marty, but I'm interested from a team perspective, the challenges of getting back players that you've been waiting for all along, but maybe at times that takes you away from what got you through those tough times without the players in the lineup.
And it was important for the Jets to be able to continue moving forward because at a time where the St. Louis Blues were struggling, the Jets were able to move ahead. At a time when the Nashville Predators were struggling, the Jets moved ahead. And Colorado was dealing with their injuries. So you look at teams that are chasing right now, the Oilers and the Flames, but, especially in the Central Division, right, the Blues, the Preds, like that was important for the Jets to put some separation, to put themselves chasing the Dallas Stars, right, for first place. So it could have gone the other way. It could have been like, okay, we're doing good. We're still in the playoff spot, but we're only a point or two up on Nashville and St. Louis. Instead, they put a gap of 8 points. And at one point, it was, I think, 12. So that was what was so important. And we all know you don't make the playoffs in October and November, but you can lose your place and miss out in the playoffs early in the season. So those added points and that cushion that they were able to build, that's great that, they can carry that into the second half of the season. So there's going to be some ups and downs and there's going to be some adversity, but I feel like the Jets have dealt with the adversity and now they can move forward with the team that they planned on having without all that the injuries. Hopefully they can stay healthy, but they're fun to watch. They move the puck quickly. They seem to have a core of players that all either get along or are honest with one another. Maybe that's what happened. I mean, when Nick Ehlers came back his first game, after the first period, he said on TV, that felt awful, right? I laugh because that's not usually the honesty that you get out of the players, but this group seems to always want to put their best foot forward and be honest and just call it as it is. And to me, that's, again, leadership, and it starts with the coach really putting his best foot forward and being honest and assessing what's going on the ice.
You could not have nailed that anymore, Marty. I mean, and that was something, frankly, that was lacking under Paul Maurice. I mean, Maurice wasn't very forthcoming. I'm not sure whether listen, that was just his style. Hey, it's his job. He can, handle it the way he wanted to. But there was a real lack of honesty. And I think from that came a lack of accountability at times for players. And that was something that Rick Bowness changed immediately right out of the gate. Even sometimes, when the team had won in the past, you'd say, oh, great, we won the game. It was like, wait a second, we can't be doing this consistently if we want to be where we want to get to. And I think it has rubbed off on the players in the big picture. It's certainly been a big positive for the Winnipeg Jets. Before I ask you about Buffalo, because they're a fascinating team, we're going to see them tomorrow. You mentioned the Central Division in the West, and you got Dallas and Vegas, who are 14 games above 500, Winnipeg, who's 12 games above 500, and LA, well, the Kraken actually are 12 as well, which is a wild story themselves. And LA, everybody else in that, 3, 4, 5 area, and you got a big group of teams that are either just above or below the wild card. I've got to ask you about two teams that I think everyone had as playoff teams, Edmonton and Colorado. Yeah. Colorado's been decimated by injuries. Edmonton's just been inconsistent. I mean, if you're on that team or a fan of that team, how concerned are you about Colorado and Edmonton? And is it far more concerning Edmonton because they have their players, minus Evander Kane, of course, than what Colorado's done, which can be somewhat understandable considering how short-manned they've been?
Well, the odd makers still believe the Colorado Avalanche will make the playoffs, and I do as well, right? I think they've got the best odds out of the teams that are outside right now to make it into the playoffs. They were injured. I feel like they got good goaltending with Georgiev, a newcomer, right, coming over from the Rangers. They did that with Darcy Kemper last year. They did that with Grubauer the year before. So they've been able to find goaltending, which is usually a lot more difficult to do in the National Hockey League. So I'm not worried about the Avalanche. When it comes to the Edmonton Oilers, now I am concerned and worried. Two things. The Oilers have only won more than 2 games in a row twice this year. They won on a 5-game winning streak earlier in the season when Evander Kane was there, and then they had a 3-game winning streak. Like, they keep saying, we got to get on a run. We got to get on a run. Well, where's the proof, right, that you can get on the run without Evander Kane? Evander Kane was a big part of the Oilers. And without him, I feel like right now you're missing a piece up front. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins sometimes has got some really good games. Sometimes you don't see him as much. Hyman, I feel like, has been pretty good. But other than McDavid and Draisaitl, who's there to add some energy and maybe change the tone of the game? And Evander Kane's not there. It's not happening. Maybe where it needs to change without Kane is, well, maybe your goalies need to step it up. And Stuart Skinner has been really good for the Oilers this year. But, I mean, they brought in Jack Campbell. And Campbell had a disastrous start to the season. He's been better of late. And I'm interested to see how the next 2 games go, because Stuart Skinner went back home. His wife is expecting their first child right here, right now, like in the next hours, days, or whatnot. So he went back home. So Jack Campbell already knows that he's going to start the next 2 games most likely. And he can take the pressure off of having to perform to get another start and build on the confidence that I think he's shown in coming in relief in LA and his past game before that. So I think goaltending's being a big question mark. Like, who do you trust more in the teams that are competing for a playoff spot? Do you trust Campbell and Stuart Skinner, or do you trust Binnington, who's done it, won a cup? And do you trust Jussi Saros, who has been a Vezina finalist, or do you trust Georgiev and what Colorado can do? Like, I feel like you can trust the other ones more than you trust the Oilers. So that's why I think the Oilers are in real trouble here.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not getting any easier, as you mentioned, because, I mean, teams like Colorado are getting their players back. I mean, I think you could probably make an argument that there's a good chance that 5 teams could come from the Central again, I guess, depending on what happens with Seattle. But Seattle's been a great story. Every time we think they're going to fall off a little bit, they go and win. I mean, you saw it last night against those Sabres.
Last night, and listen, their depth is incredible. You can be looking at Eberle, Beniers, and Burakovsky as their top line, and they were really good against the Sabres last night. And that's the difference, right? Beniers now, last year he wasn't there. Burakovsky wasn't there either. He was in Colorado. So they really give Seattle a top line. But their depth, like, you watch Tanev, you watch Gord, you watch McCann, you watch, Geeky was in last night. There's so much depth on that forward group that they just keep rolling, which is not something they had last year. So Seattle, for me, is legit. They got a solid performance out of Grubauer. Martin Jones had the shutout on Monday night against the Canadiens. I don't think they have been lights out, but they've been winning games. So as a goaltender, you look at 2 things. How are my personal stats, goals against average, save percentage, all of that? if that's good, the win-loss record, well, it's secondary. But if your win-loss record is great, don't worry about the goals against average. Like, find the stats that work, and I think that's what Jones and Grubauer have been able to do, mostly Jones for the Seattle Kraken.
Now let's get to the team that you cover most closely that we're going to see tomorrow night, the Buffalo Sabres. And, they're coming off 2 disappointing home losses. They're going to get an ornery Jets team after what happened last night in Detroit. It should be a fascinating matchup. But I pay a lot of attention to Buffalo, maybe more than most teams. It's been amazing to watch the player that Tage Thompson has turned into. But, I mean, give us your perspective on their first half of the season. Some real highs, but some of those lows as well, and maybe they're at that point right now.
So the Sabres at one point were being helped by having some secondary scoring. It first started with Rasmus Dahlin. He scored in 5 straight games to start the season. That had never been done by a defenseman, so that's an NHL record, and Dahlin's been fantastic. At some point, they had Dylan Cousins really progressing, and he's played great. But his line with Jack Quinn and JJ Peterka were providing secondary scoring. That has really dried up. And so Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, Jeff Skinner have had to really carry the load. And all 3 of them are having career years and monster years, especially Tage Thompson with what he's been able to do. Over 30 goals, and he was on pace for 69 at one point. That's dropped down a little bit. He hasn't scored in his last 2, but he can just change the flow of the game with his hands, with his shot. He can shoot the one-timer over 100 miles an hour, which now with the puck tracking, we can see that in game, and it's pretty cool to see. But they need more out of Casey Middlestat, out of Victor Olofsson. Those are 2 that have definitely been singled out as to trying to get more secondary scoring. Olofsson has scored a lot this year, a lot of empty netters, some power play markers. So it's a little skewed with the stats. But on defense, man, Rasmus Dahlin, Matthias Samuelsson, Owen Power, they've been great. In goal, they've got a situation now that's a little dicey because they've got Craig Anderson, who's 41 years old, that doesn't play regularly. He needs more maintenance to get organized, although he's played well this year. Eric Comrie, you guys all know him from his great season last year with the Jets. He was hurt for the better part of the last 2 months. He went down, played 3 conditioning game in Rochester, played last night, wasn't supposed to play last night against Seattle. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen was supposed to play, but was ill. But, they got 3 goalies. They got too many players for their roster right now, so some paper transactions are happening every day. Kevin Adams says it's a good problem to have, but it is a problem because they have too many players and they don't have enough roster spots. So I don't know. I would assume that maybe we'll see Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen tomorrow night against the Jets if he's healthy, if he's overcome the flu bug or whatever he had. But maybe we see Comrie again. I don't think we'll see Craig Anderson, but I think we can see either Comrie or Luukkonen against the Jets. And that's where the juggling starts with the Sabres when it comes to who's going to be in net and what kind of impact it's going to have on the game.
Well, I think Comrie's fascinating. Of course, as you mentioned, we all know him very well. And he had that great start, that run they had out west. He was winning, I think, 3 straight, but sort of hit a wall, as did the team with that big losing streak afterwards. But to Buffalo's credit, I mean, they moved past that. They started scoring, and Tage Thompson has been the guy leading the way. I mean, Marty, we laugh about this when you look back at that draft. I mean, he was picked 26th, I believe, and then traded.
Yep.
And if you redrafted that draft right now, he's probably right behind Austin Matthews. How has he done it? I mean, has he grown into this player throughout his time in Buffalo? Was there one point where he kind of felt more comfortable in his massive frame or how to use it? Because, man, when you look at him, he's a unicorn right now with his size and his scoring ability and what he's doing right now, already passing the 30-goal mark.
Yeah, some have compared a little bit of a skill set to what Mario Lemieux did. Look, Mario is out of this world, so I don't want to compare Tage Thompson to Mario, but the skill, right? The stick handling, the being so much taller, the wingspan. Like Mario was 6'4", but everybody was 5'11", 6 foot at the time. Tage Thompson is 6'6.5", but everybody's 6'2", 6'3". So his differential between height, like it's almost like Mario back in the days. So he stands out. But Tage has got the silky smooth hands. He's got the big shot. He's got the wingspan, as you just said, where he can move the puck from one way to the other and change the angle really rapidly. But the big change was Don Granato really knew Tage Thompson. Going back to the National Development Program, when Tage joined as a 17-year-old, Don Granato was coaching at the program in the U.S. at the time and remembers the first time he saw him actually here in Buffalo at the Northtown Center. It's the arena that the USA Hockey use a lot for those, festival and showcases. So you remember seeing him. And then last year, the summer of 2021, he said to Tage, I may try you at center. And Tage was like, okay, let's see what happened, right? So he puts Tage Thompson at center. It unlocks his potential. He doesn't have to worry about the wall, the boards, playing in restrained space. He's got now room in the middle of the ice to be able to use his skill set. And it's really worked. A lot of time, you can't move a winger to the center position because the center is hard to play. But with Tage Thompson and where the Sabres were, they had time to really work with him and see what was going to happen. And he did a masterful job. And you have to also give credit to Alex Tuch. When Alex Tuch joined the Sabres after the Eichel trade, he was still injured from an off-season surgery. And in January last year, when Tuch, Thompson, and Skinner would put together, it took off. So you're seeing that this year as well. Those three together really, really are one of the top lines in the National Hockey League.
I cannot wait for the game tomorrow night. It should be a lot of fun between two pretty exciting teams. Just only on the way out, Marty, I have to quickly ask you about this. It has nothing to do with the Jets or the Sabres. But half the league's tanking for Connor Bedard right now. We just saw him at the World Junior Championships. As a former goaltender, what goes through your mind when you see this kid shoot the puck?
First of all, it's a laser. So there's a few different things as a goalie you look for in a shot, right? The release, how the player can hide where they're shooting, how quick the release is. Connor Bedard, like his release is incredible. It's quick off the blade. He doesn't shoot from the same location all the time, so it changes location. Sometimes it's on his right foot, sometimes it's on his left foot. There's a weight transfer there. So the release is NHL superstar release, right? But also the precision and the speed, the velocity on the shot. Like he uses that flex on his stick so well that it's a laser every time it comes off the stick. And he knows he can beat goalies from out far. Like I know it's the World Junior, so it's not NHL goalies, but he was beating goalies from 30, 40 feet out on the wrist shot, right? So, and he was trying to beat them that far away too. A lot of NHL players won't do that because they don't think they can score. Connor Bedard thinks he can score with his wrist shot from anywhere on the ice. So I think it's going to surprise a lot of good NHL goalies next year when he plays in the NHL, because we all know he's going to go 1 overall and he's going to play in the NHL next season.
Marty, you're the best. Thanks so much for doing this and enjoy the game tomorrow night. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me. You guys have a good rest of the week.
Right back at you. There is Marty Biron, one of the best in the biz when it comes to breaking it down. And of course, being so close to Buffalo, perfect time to get him before the Jets take on the Sabres tomorrow night. More Jets talk coming up with Murat. And we will also talk some Bombers offseason as Kyle Walters joins us from the CFL meetings in Kananaskis. Caught up with him after the show yesterday. We'll play that for you a little bit later on. But let's get to it. I wanted to get Marty on. But now, folks, we've had, first of all, I want to thank everyone for their submissions and nominations for our Unsung Hero from Wallace & Wallace. Make sure to send us an email at unsunghero at winnipegsportstalk.com and let us know about the person in the community that's making an impact through volunteerism, helping out people in need and more. And we've got to give a big congratulations. And first off, thank you very much to Lauren Finley, the WST listener, who nominated the December winner for the Unsung Hero, and that is Mark Hache. And this is from Lauren. Mark is a guy in his late 50s who gives and gives and gives in many ways and has for a long time. He's been a delivery person for Meals on Wheels for several years now. He always takes that extra time to check in with the people he delivers to, especially if anything seems off. Meals on Wheels also frequently call for extra routes when others are able to help out. He's a member of a group called Makers Making Change. This is a group that all have an interest in things like 3D printing and other ways of creating items with a specific focus on helping those with disabilities and helping them with accommodations to assist them in day-to-day lives. This group's also held workshop-type events for high school students who are interested in this type of work and volunteerism. Mark and his fellow group members were very involved in getting those massive extenders printed out to various groups in the disability and healthcare community during those early days of masking. The local group, I believe, is affiliated with a larger national group. He's also been involved in the Relay for Life for the last few years, which is an event that raises funds for the Canadian Cancer Society, and spent 2 years as the volunteer coordinator, and this year took on role of chair for the entire local organizing committee. And though it's mostly his wife's work, he regularly helps her and her local dog rescue group when trying to catch lost missing dogs so they can be returned home. Mark, you are the epitome of what the Unsung Hero program is all about. Congratulations. And we're going to have an autographed jersey from Jets All-Star defenseman Josh Morrissey for Mark. And Lauren, thank you so much for making that donation. Wallace & Wallace is going to donate $500 in your name to the Dream Factory, and Josh and Margot Morrissey are going to match that. So we've got another $1,000 to the Dream Factory and a very, very deserving unsung hero in Mark Hache. Lauren, thanks so much. And folks, let us know about someone like Mark in your life. Send us an email, unsunghero@winnipegsportstalk.com, and maybe we'll be reading out their unsung hero story next month on WST. Great stuff. Thanks again to Lauren for a great, great nomination. All right. Hey, got to thank our friends over at Royal Sports for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. We're into January, and I'm looking out. They got the flood going on right now on the River Trail. And I know we often think of skates just being for hockey, but man, this is a great time to take advantage of what winter has to offer here in Winnipeg, and that is often getting on the ice. Now, you don't have to go and buy $1,000 skates like you're playing in the National Hockey League. Royal Sports has some great, less expensive options for people that just want to go out, hit the outdoor rink, or hit the skate trails. Pop down and see him and ask about those skates at 750 Pembina Highway. While you're there, check out the amazing Jets merchandise, Bomber merchandise, NFL, CFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, soccer from around the world. And don't forget that great Yeti department if you're looking for maybe keeping something hot while you're out doing something throughout the evening. F Apparel as well. Ready for 2023, guys. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? You know where to start. Pop down and see Andrew Parks and his great staff at F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. They're the leaders in custom suits, starting at just $400 here in Winnipeg for men. Also, do custom shirts, pants, chinos, golf pants, and more. While you're there, check out the great selection of accessories, ties, belts, and everything you need to up your wardrobe game. And wedding parties or 2023 grads, make sure to talk to them about great specials going into the new year. And hey, just before we bring Murat on, always a great time to hit up your local Boston Pizza. I know BP is a great supporter of the ice, and we got a huge ice game tonight out at Max Bell, or the Ice Cave, I should say, between Winnipeg and Seattle. Whether you're hitting the Jets or the ice, no better place to go before or after the game than your local Boston Pizza. Check out all the great new seasonal items, including the carbonara pizza and the jalapeno popper dip. And hey, if it's too cold and you're staying at home, you can order online anywhere in the city and much of Manitoba online at bostonpizza.com. Bomber fans, stay tuned. Kyle Walters coming up a little later on in the program. But let's continue our Jets conversation heading into Buffalo, coming out of Detroit with Murat of The Athletic. Murat, what's up? How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm hanging in there, Huss. Happy to be here. How are things?
Well, things are good. I'm putting on a brave face, but I will be honest, and we talked about this at the beginning of the show. I mean, listen, you win and lose games. It's a long season. I was so disappointed about what happened last night, just because I thought that if there was ever a game this team needed to win, that was the one, considering what was on the line to send Rick Bowness to the All-Star game after never being there ever in his career that spanned over 2,600 games. And I mean, from a spectator's point, I mean, that game certainly wasn't boring, but it started off poorly. And despite everything the Jets threw at Detroit, some mishaps in their own end, a few getting past Connor Hellebuck, and it just didn't seem it was meant to be. Interested in your thoughts on last night's 7-5 loss to the Wings.
You know, it's funny, but when that game started, I thought Winnipeg was playing a little bit better than it did in its start against Vancouver. And that was a bit stunning, and it seemed the goals were going in and all of that sort of stuff. But the way that Winnipeg usually burns itself is puck management. The way that they break the puck out of the zone. They were talking about it after Vancouver. They went through the middle too much. They played that puck into traffic too much. Against Detroit, they fixed that. They were moving up the ice well. They were getting into structure. It was just that every single time that they got a step behind the Red Wings in their own zone defensive coverage, Detroit got into space, launched a shot that beat Connor Hellebuck. And as much as you could keep saying, well, hey, the structure's better, they're kind of doing the right things. You know, Winnipeg kept falling just that one step behind, and then Hellebuck wasn't able to bail them out like he normally does. So whether that's, you know, in man-to-man coverage, Dylan DeMello ends up at the point, and that's fine. But, you know, he gets beat by Jake Wallman, boom, the shot's in the net. Okay, that happens. You know, whether it's Brendan Dillon a little bit later, a puck hopping over the stick of Neil Pionk a little bit later when Winnipeg had some momentum, some penalties. You know, I didn't trust Detroit to hold its own lead, but I didn't trust Winnipeg to hold its comeback together either, to defend it. And, you know, all those mistakes just ended up burning them. I think it's a disappointing way to lose because there were things to like, even as they gave up goal after goal after goal.
Well, an eminently winnable game. And I mean, Lalonde said afterwards, I mean, hey, our best player was Ville Husso. I mean, it wasn't that the Jets sort of packed it up and didn't push. I mean, I will give them credit for, I think, maybe feeling that they really, I mean, of this game, the bonus factor of the All-Star, I mean, wanting that for the organization, but especially for the coach and really pushing. But at a certain point, when you dig yourself a hole the way the team did in the first period, you can get so focused on getting that next one, you sort of forget about taking care of things in your own end. And you're exactly right. I mean, it wasn't like the Detroit Red Wings spent a lot of time in the Jet zone or were, you know, it was a back and forth game. It seemed like an onslaught for 40 minutes, but the minute that the Red Wings had even the slightest opportunity, the red light seemed to be going on, which is very unusual when 37's in the net.
Yeah, exactly. Connor Hellebuck has stolen many a game, and he'll steal many more games, and he is still a viable contender for the Vezina Trophy. We can get more into that later if that's you know, still a passion of yours. I know you guys were talking about awards the other day. But last night, he did not bail them out. And last night, I think for a little while, he was running, you know, a save percentage in the 500 or 600 level. And that's, you know, not going to win you games. You can't spot any team, quote unquote, even the Detroit Red Wings. I mean, and the Detroit Red Wings aren't a bad hockey club. The NHL isn't such a disparate league where a team like the Red Wings is automatically a gimme or a pushover. Winnipeg's in the middle of a spot where they're playing against a lot of teams not scheduled to make the playoffs. And they need to make hay without taking these guys for granted, giving up one step here, one step there, and some shots that, you know, Connor Hellebuck would want back. At the same time, I do have to give you a nod, too, when you're talking about, well, Winnipeg created chances. They absolutely did. Cole Perfetti was back towards a pre-injury form. Blake Wheeler was in on some of that action. That Pierre-Luc Dubois line could just dominate for stretches. It was amazing to watch Dubois actually at both ends of the ice. He did some great defending work in front of his own net too, although I think he may have been a screen on perhaps the Wallman goal. But he was all over the ice. They can pin teams in their own zone. So then when you're spotting teams' leads, teams you should beat, when you have the opportunity to give your coach a ticket to his first ever All-Star game, I mean, it's just adds up to disappointment and a bitter taste, I imagine.
You know, but as I did say, and I'm trying to, you know, put on a very positive face right now on this one, if you told me at the start of the year that we'd be all bent because of one loss in game 41 and the team is 3 points out of first with a game in hand, probably would smack myself in the face and say, dude, get a grip, man. because it really has been an unbelievable first half of the season. But I think that's why, with the situation that was on the table last night for the Jets, is so disappointing, is that so much of this turnaround we can attribute to everything that Rick Bowness has done. And not only would it be great personally for Rick, who absolutely, I think, deserves to be there, a nice bit of recognition for the Winnipeg Jets to be the number one team in the Central. Of course, they fell just short in that maybe a lot of people hadn't been paying attention to, and those sort of events where the entire league comes together and realize, well, wait a second, Bones is on the bench. What's happening in Winnipeg? And tell you what, the best way to do that, though, is make the playoffs and make things happen in the spring. And they certainly have put themselves very much in the conversation to do exactly that.
Yeah, that's something that did not disappear with one poorly defended game against the Detroit Red Wings last night. Winnipeg continues to be a playoff-bound team. They do enough of the little things right to give their stars a chance to get going. The first half review is a positive one. There's no doubt about it. And even when you think, or I reflect back, that game against Tampa Bay, where Winnipeg is, going toe-to-toe with and controlling parts of a game against a team that won the Stanley Cup 2 out of 3 seasons. And the fans in my ads and my replies and all that sort of stuff on Twitter and what have you, they're ruthless. It's as if Winnipeg absolutely belongs there. Any talk of the Jets struggling heading into the season or last year's issues is gone. Jets fans expect wins now. That is a sea change. That is a transformative cultural shift, I think, that the Winnipeg Jets have earned. At the same time, just that opportunity, and I'll harp on this one more time. The Jets, they want the playoffs. They want playoff wins, all of that sort of stuff. And awards talk is starting to begin. And I don't doubt for a second that somebody who doesn't pay close attention to the Winnipeg Jets is going to look at the All-Star game, and they're going to see Pete DeBoer there for the Dallas Stars. And no matter what happens from here to the end, no matter who deserves how much amount of credit, that name recognition in a high-profile moment for a broadcaster, for whomever, I think that's going to stick some people's names in people's minds. And it may have, in a roundabout way, taken a hit to Bonus's Jack Adams case at the end of the year as well.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that was part of the reason why I thought it was so important from someone that may or not have sprinkled on Rick's at 28-1 to win the Jack Adams. The fact of the matter is that if he was there, it would have been one of the great stories of the All-Star game. I mean, this is a guy that is so beloved around the league that hasn't had that opportunity. It would have been a wake-up call for many of the folks that haven't been paying attention at all to the Winnipeg Jets. And, the Jack Adams is voted on by the broadcasters. And yes, you have some national broadcasters. And listen, to be perfectly honest, I don't think the national broadcasters do a very good job at, paying attention to all of the teams in the league. And certainly the local ones, especially the ones in the East, will see the Jets twice in a season. So there was a big opportunity to maybe shine a bit more of a light on the club and the head coach at the same time. But they move on and they head to Buffalo to try and take away the bad taste of the mouth from last night's loss and they get back in the win column. It is sort of funny that was breaking up a 5-game winning streak, their longest winning streak since 2019, and so many other things have gone so well. But let me move on to this, Murat. And it was funny listening to some post-game conversations last night, as well as talking with some people. We've been waiting for Ehlers and Perfetti and Wheeler and Schmidt to come back. They all come back on Friday night against Tampa. And, full credit to every single player, some of the guys that have been back to the Manitoba Moose, some guys that are now in the press box. I mean, everyone doing what they had to do to keep their heads above water and survive the month of December, which the team did incredibly well. The Tampa game was awesome. I mean, and Rick Bowness loved it. He talked about that, felt like a playoff game. These last 2 games were like a 180 from a playoff game. I mean, it was 80s fire wagon hockey. At times it looked like pond hockey, especially in that Vancouver game. I'm just interested in your perspective on what the team has looked like since these players have come back, more so in the last couple of games, and what you think the focus will be with the team and the coaching staff to try to get them back playing more along the blueprint that got them to this gaudy place in the standings in the first place.
Well, there's going to be a little bit of a writer just sees a narrative and can't help it in my answer to that question. But I think that there's some truth to this. When the margin for error for Winnipeg was so slim with all those guys out of the lineup, every last little detail had to go in Winnipeg's favor for the Jets to come out of a game with a win. They had to get the special teams victory. They had to get the goaltending victory. They had to control what they could control at 5-on-5. Get at least two of those three things together, and Winnipeg had a chance to win. And I'm not saying that they stepped off the gas or anything to that effect in the last couple of games. They're out there. They're trying. I don't think they're assuming that just because these guys are back, the win is in the bag. But there is something that Winnipeg has been guilty of in recent seasons, which is when they start scoring a highlight reel goal or two, they seem to go back to the highlight reel goal attempt, bag of tricks more often than necessarily getting those little things right time and time again. And I thought that maybe some of those beautiful plays against Vancouver, especially on Sunday, that led to goals, especially for that Ehlers line, may have for a time got the Jets playing a little bit too high risk, high reward, instead of waiting for those moments to open up organically that they could attack and seize upon. And that's the sort of thing that I'd worry about for the Winnipeg Jets right now. That's the sort of thing where Winnipeg has worked so hard for half a season to establish playing the right way more often than not. And there's a fear maybe that having these guys back, scoring a couple of beauties, is going to change that for a little while. I don't think that there's a risk that it's off the rails necessarily or about to go off the rails, but that's the mission for the Jets right now. And I think we've seen enough cracks in that in the last two games that, going into this Buffalo game, that's first and foremost on my wish list for these Winnipeg Jets, is they go back to, every line looking the same, waiting for their opportunity to strike, because the way some of those stars are playing right now, they can dominate for stretches and they will get their opportunities.
Ehlers hated his first period when he came back, and we were just talking to Marty about what he had to say, his frank honesty, in between periods of the Tampa game. But man, he's looked dangerous since then. I mean, what have you made of Ehlers and the way he's looked now, back playing 3 games after just getting in the first 2 of the season back in October?
I mean, the guy's on track to have the sort of season he was supposed to have. His vision is there. His ability to see his teammates is there, even when he doesn't see them. I mean, when he takes that pass in his first game back from Pierre-Luc Dubois high in the zone, he doesn't even see Kyle Connor on that right wing open in space, but he knows that Connor is there. I mean, I asked him, I'd watch that replay, I'm like, where do you pick up that Connor is there? He's like, you know what? I don't know that I could say I saw him. I felt him, I think is what he said, that he, in terms of how he knew that. And that's impressive stuff. The fact that he already has that line has looked like it has all the chemistry in the world. I think last week you and me, we talked, hey, Pierre-Luc Dubois and Kyle Connor, they can get it done with anybody. Don't worry about it. That's a soft landing spot for Ehlers. Well, look what he's been able to do since joining them, that he's adding to that. He's a passenger by no means. The other thing, Huss, is what I'm going to say. I don't know if this is going to be I don't know if this is a hot take. I don't think he's as fast as he was. And I know he's flying. I saw him go for that breakaway last night. I mean, there are times when other teams simply can't handle his speed. And yet I still think that we're seeing 90% of fly, so to speak, right now. So I think there's more from him yet down the stretch as the series season goes on.
Well, that is a good thing for the Winnipeg Jets, and certainly the way that line's clicked right out of the gate has been fun to watch, although it's about both ends, and I'm sure that'll be reinforced by the coaching staff when they get ready for these back-to-backs. Adam Lowry's had a monster season. He has been, we talked about it going in. I mean, I thought that he was poised to have his best season as a Jet, and he's doing that. Which, again, I go back to last night's game for a minute. I mean, that play where they were killing the penalty and he had the puck on his stick was almost bizarre from a player like Lowry. How did you see that? Before I give you my take on it, I'm interested in what you saw in that and what Lowry was trying to do that obviously ended up not working, going onto the stick of Murat and very quickly into the Jets net.
Yeah, you know what? I'm trying to think of what I would say about that. It's just a situation where a player has made that play, whether it's getting the clear or even going up for a rush, so many times, and has done the right thing and executed it so many times is almost like Hellebuck in a way. When he has a game where his numbers are poor and his goals are saved above expectation, takes a monster hit, and all of those sorts of things. When the guy's track record is good enough, I mean, yeah, I guess my first instinct is, hey, you know what? Lowry will get that play made, 9 out of the next 10 times. If
do you think though but do you think that he was trying to make an offensive play on that? I mean, I heard Sean talking about it last night on KNR, and I guess his take on that was that Lowry had the puck and was going to try and bang it past Moritz Seider and go in on a scoring chance, which he's done very successfully at times throughout the past year. My perception of it, and I'll have to go back and watch that shift again, was that they were out there for so long killing that penalty that when he finally got it, it was almost just like a momentary relaxation when he was doing the thing and just didn't get it out. Like, I'm not sure whether I was just looking at it in a different framework, because I really didn't feel that there was any thought of an offensive play on that. It was more a level of desperation that just every now and then you let up for a moment. And I think they had been so tense for so long. Just interested whether you had a thought on either way of like on that particular play.
Yeah, you know what? I think I need to watch it a couple times too and sort of get a feel for maybe the rhythm of that moment a little bit more than I have. Like, guys get tired. That's when the mental mistakes happen. That's when, that sort of stuff happens. At the same time, Winnipeg doesn't tend to play with a lot of fear on the PK. So,
good point.
Do I think he absolutely wasn't just because it was 3-on-5? Well, I don't know. But I do think Adam Lowry usually would have the game awareness not to push on a shift that long. Got to watch it before I have a strong opinion.
Yeah, like I really thought at that point, I mean, it was like, okay, thank God I'm able to get off for a shift. And like, oh my God, that didn't go. And again, it was sort of the story of last night. After all that great penalty killing, one mistake like that, bang, bang, it's in the net. And, in a lot of ways, that was what happened last night. One thing I've got to say, and this is maybe a perfect time because we are at the midway point of the season. Josh Morrissey is the Winnipeg Jets All-Star. He has had a season beyond anyone's expectations, even Rick Bonus's, as he mentioned. Morrissey was on another level last night. I mean, I don't know how many times he banged out that spinorama move to the point where Detroit was grabbing the back of his jersey to hold him up. I mean, it seems like, on a weekly basis, he's adding and showing more things to his game, Murat, and I got to tell you, that has to be incredibly exciting for anyone that pulls for the Jets.
I mean, yeah, those dancing moves, those steps are God-given, you might say, in the moment, playing jazz out there, just supreme confidence in his own ability that when he sees a hint of space or the opportunity to create that space, Morrissey is doing that consistently. And I think for me, the big thing is, and maybe last night's what made me think of it, because Winnipeg was trailing and they were chasing and there was a desperation. I was thinking about how every few games last season, we would see a glimpse of something like that. When Winnipeg was chasing a game, only the green light would go on and Josh Morrissey would be encouraged to do that sort of stuff. And he could take over games. We only saw it in few-minute stretches and third periods. And the season-long story for Josh Morrissey is he's been able to do that, and he has the green light. And I think one of the things that's happened now by game 41 of the season is he has seen some of those situations enough times. He's been in that situation enough times where now he has new ideas, like that little left-right step around the forechecker at the blue line into the spinorama. I think that's a new moment. And, the amount of frequency we're seeing the spinorama, I think that he's taken looks at that coverage and attacked it with success often enough that he's getting more and more ideas as the season goes on. And from a developmental point of view, which seems weird because he's in his mid-late 20s already, that seems like exactly what you want for a player learning to develop even more skills and take the next step.
It was unfortunate for Ville Heinola, who was supposed to be in the game last night. The coaches had said he was in. Dylan Samberg was going to be in the press box. And then shortly before the game, we hear Jamie Thomas mention on OB that Billy's actually not playing. He's sick, a non-COVID illness, and Samberg was going in. And, in that first period, and maybe this is going to sound nuts, but I actually was thinking, man, could they use Ville Heinola? And not because they need to score a bunch of goals, but just at times defensively, it seemed like the team was running around a little bit. And the one thing that Philly has done when he gets the puck on his stick more often than not is make the right decision, make the right play, and get it out of their own end. And I mean, for a young man that's played so little, although he's looked really good, you wouldn't necessarily think that a rookie is the guy that's bringing that to the table right now. But, you know, considering the situation in the first period, I actually did have that thought that they could really use 14 in the lineup tonight, and he wasn't there.
I mean, that's a testament to the stretch that he was on before he came out of the lineup, I think. And, you know, you say he played so little. Part of me is like, is that a height thing? He's not 6'7"? Is that your way of saying that, Huss? But no, I think that one of the things that got away from Winnipeg in that first period was the sort of thing that he's good at. And it was decisions at speed. And, you know, Detroit would get half a step and turn that into a whole step of space and then get it shot off in Winnipeg's defensive zone. And, you know, I have time for that. Do I think that Ville would have been a cure-all? I'm not sure. But one thing that I am confident in saying is that for his stretch of play, for me, he's been often the third, fourth, second best player on that Winnipeg Jets blue line in this most recent run of games. And with that in mind, good health brought him out of the lineup. That's got to suck personally on an individual level for him. To have illness take him out when it was his turn to go back in, that's also got to suck, because you want him to keep that momentum going. Because like you, I mean, I trust him more and more and more every time he plays out there.
You know, Murat, there's an interesting piece in The Athletic where I believe it was Shayna and Dom put together the player cards with some neat graphics on, you know, some analytic measurements of all of the players. But I mean, you cover this team as close as anyone, certainly from The Athletic. I mean, now that we're at the midway point of the season, we've talked about Josh Morrissey, and I mean, to me, he is at the top of the list of change makers as well as contributors. But when you look back at this first half of the season, is there a player or two that stands out to you, maybe above the rest, that has really been a massive factor in turning around the situation that the Jets had going into game one of the season against the Rangers?
Yeah, I think for me, it's strength down the middle. And, you know, heading into the season, I thought it would be Nikolai Ehlers. Health has made it so that that's not necessarily the case, even though on a per game basis, he's been phenomenal. I think what really held Winnipeg back sometimes last season was that it really only had one top line center at a time, if you're looking strictly based on results. When Scheifele was sort of snake bitten early, Dubois was pretty good. When Scheifele had his hot streak late, Dubois sort of fell off. And at no point did either of them, but especially Scheifele last season, put together a strong run of 200-foot play. You know, Dubois would in times, and certainly that's a growing process, but Scheifele's 200-foot game was quite poor last season. So I think the biggest turnaround for me is that Winnipeg has enjoyed, at least analytically, two top-line centers in almost every game that it's played. Part of that is because not only is Scheifele scoring, but his defensive game has gone from really quite a liability to something that is completely reasonable given what he creates. And he's also not had an easy run of it, with so many of his line mates getting injured at different times, especially when Wheeler and Perfetti and Scheifele had developed that chemistry. But I think that his season, Scheifele's, is a big part of it. And the other is a huge, enormous step forward for Pierre-Luc Dubois, where he's playing an even better version of his game than last year. And so far, through 41 games, you're getting it most nights, almost every night. This most recent stretch has me an absolute believer that this guy is a number one center, not of the future, but of right now. And that strength down the middle, Lowry too, but not quite on that level, is what is a huge part of Winnipeg's success.
You know what is really interesting of these player cards, folks, and go check them out at the piece at The Athletic, is, you know, they have what the player's salary is, but they also have what their market value is based on their performance this year. And let me just run through a few of these numbers that have been put together by the group. Connor Hellebuck's market value, $10.5 million. The surplus value is 4.4. Josh Morrissey's number for this year, by their metrics and calculations, $11.1 million based on the market. And then you go to the forwards, and Pierre-Luc Dubois, they have him at 9.2, so a surplus of 3.2. Nikolai Ehlers, and again, this is a very small sample size, but at 10 million, surplus of 4. Surprisingly, Scheifele is just at 6.7, which is a slight bump. I would have thought that might have been a little bit higher. And then, of course, Kyle Connor at 10 million, which is a surplus of 2.9. Those examples, and again, some people will buy into more of those estimates more than others, but I think it shows the amount of players right now that are playing above what they may be signed for right now. And that's exactly what you need if you want to have a team that really takes a big run at a cup, to get great performances from the guys around them, and the guys that you're paying big money not only earn it, but exceed the value of the contract.
Yeah, especially when you have a team that's, whose former captain at 8.25 million he's not likely to outperform that. And that's singling out one contract. So many teams, even the greats, can have one contract like that.
Oh, yeah.
Winnipeg spends a lot of money on its blue line too. You could go through Neil Pionk, Nate Schmidt, etc. So you're looking for those guys that you just mentioned to outperform their contracts by at least as much as, they're losing elsewhere on the roster in terms of efficiency. And when every team in the NHL has the exact same amount of money to spend, at least from a cap perspective, then how you spend it, winning becomes an efficiency contest. How much bang per buck do you get? That's how you win in the NHL. And Winnipeg desperately needed, a lot of their big ticket guys to have big ticket seasons this year. Sets up a scary future for Pierre-Luc Dubois' contract, perhaps. But in terms of winning, that's absolutely what the Jets, have needed this season. The other thing I just want to keep in mind is that these numbers some stats are meant to be a prediction of how good guys are in the future. Some, like say a total points that somebody has in a season, that's just a snapshot in time. I believe that the model that goes into these salary estimates is a little combination of both as well. So results matter quite a bit. And the fact that these guys have put up a lot of points certainly works in their favor too.
Well, and listen, those are some of the big positives, the big pluses. The one guy, you mentioned his name, that is on the other end of the spectrum is Neil Pionk. And, he makes 5.9. Their market value is league minimum. And, the one number that just stands out is this defensive number, which is this year, or I guess from last year at -20 and projected for this year at -27. The team as a whole, much better defensively. The numbers are all better. Pionk has been chipping in offensively. Where does this come from, and what do you make of the issues that Pionk has had defensively this season?
Yeah, Neil Pionk's season through 41 games defensively, in my mind, has not been good. There have been times early on in his Jets career where he was Winnipeg's best defenseman, in my view.
So he got the contract.
Exactly right. And I think that perhaps since that's a bigger question, but I think maybe since about this time last year, he had some injury trouble. He had injury trouble even heading into the offseason, wherein he said he wouldn't play in the Worlds because he needed time to get some things healed. It hasn't been a really strong stretch of defending. And what really shows up, and remember, Winnipeg started this season with Morrissey and Pionk on the same pairing, right? And well, if you broke down the video, as I did in one of my pieces at The Athletic, that pairing had given up a lot of expected goals against. And when you were looking for breakdowns, usually it was on the Pionk element of that pairing, where it was his man or his space or what have you that became the issue. And when you're looking at one of these things that the analytics in this capacity will do really well is it'll go through all of the combinations of Pionk with Morrissey, without Morrissey, with Dylan, without Dylan. And when all of those players' expected goals metrics look better without Pionk, it really helps hurt his analytic case to be a strong defenseman right now. I will say these last 2 games, probably a step forward in terms of my view of his quickness, his assertiveness, some of the defensive plays that he's making, but then the puck hops over a stick and he's saddled with, I think, another minus at that moment. It's just not been a strong defensive season for him, and maybe that gets into a little bit of the why.
Murat of The Athletic with us. Hey, before we go, and I'll direct people to The Athletic to check it out. a really fun conversation with maybe the most fun guy to talk to on the Winnipeg Jets in Nate Schmidt. Fill people in a little bit on what's waiting there from a little earlier this week on your sit down with 88.
I mean, what a joy. What a pleasure. Just before he got hurt, I put this to Athletic subscribers where we put out a call for questions where they could ask Nate Schmidt questions, not directly, but through me. He got hurt, so that kind of put a little delay in it. But, this weekend we were able to sit down and just from start to finish of that conversation, it was something like half an hour. It wasn't like most of half an hour, I think I'm going to say, is just a joy. It's just a treat. Like he makes sure that that I'm comfortable, that various other Jets, Dylan Sandberg popped in for a couple of jokes. Sam Gagner swung by to say a word. Like it was kind of Nate Schmidt's social hour. So we have all the fun. I ask all the fan questions and, of course he tees off for 4 minutes per question. He's talking about what he loves about Winnipeg. He's talking about, how he's handling his snow shoveling and how embarrassed he is that he doesn't shovel as much as he used to. He shares some family news. He answers silly questions like what he would do if he were given an elephant and couldn't give an elephant. So all of the joy is there, laughter throughout. And then at the end, it turns and we have kind of an introspective conversation because one of the fans asked, well, what are the pressures that come with being seen as such a happy guy? And he gets into kind of his self-care, the journaling that he does, the self-talk that he has. And this guy who I think a lot of folks know how fun and funny he is. I mean, he has a really thoughtful side, and I think he knows what makes himself tick, and he talks about all of it. I just so pleased with that interview. It left me in a good mood for the rest of the day just to have that excellent conversation. And I hope that if you haven't already read it, you do, and you get a kick out of it too.
Well, you know what? For folks that are still bent about last night's game, sit down with Nate Schmidt for half an hour. This sit down with Murat Tesh will maybe get you more ready for the game tomorrow against the Buffalo Sabres. Just on the way out and more back-to-backs. Buffalo's lost a couple at home. We just talked to Marty Biron. They're a team that's had some real highs and some real lows so far this season. What do you expect from the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow coming out of what happened last night in Motown?
Yeah, I just think a renewed commitment to process. I don't think that it was such a horrible game, which sounds weird given they gave up 7 and 6 with the goalie in the net. I think doubling down on getting the little things right is going to be what they need to do, because I once upon a time wasn't a Tage Thompson believer. Now I am. There's some offense to be wary of from the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Yeah, Tage Thompson's one of the great stories in hockey over the course of the last few years, turning into, a full-fledged superstar and a guy that signed that deal, speaking of exceeding market value, doing it right now, already past the 30-goal mark on the season, and Jets are going to need to be getting ready for the Buffalo Sabres tomorrow night. Murat, always a pleasure. Had to bring up that chat with Nate because it was one of the most fun reads I've had in a long, long time. Hopefully people will go check it out. And you be well, stay warm, and we'll catch up next week.
Right on, Huss. Thanks for having me.
There it is, at WPG Murat Tesh on Twitter. Make sure to get to The Athletic, subscribe, and check out all the great content Murat has for us. All right. We got to get to some Bomber talk. Just before we do that, though, when we talk Bombers on this program, all our Bomber reports are brought to you by a great sponsor, the Bombers and Winnipeg Sports Talk, Princess Auto. You know them well. They're the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Proud sponsors of the Bombers, WST, and of course, Team Jennifer Jones, Team Reed Carruthers. Will be having some speaks with them over the course of the next few weeks on the program. But in the meantime, pop on down and see them at one of 2 Winnipeg locations, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, or you can shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Got to give a big shout out to Donnie and the gang over at Manitoba Battery as well. We know, folks, that it is the time of the year that, sometimes the car won't start. You can't be having that. That has to be rectified immediately. And the best way to do that is make sure your battery's good to go. And hey, listen, best way to do it, if you're wondering whether you got the life to get you through the winter, pop on down to 1026 Logan Avenue and see Donnie and the gang. They'll give you a quick free test, and if you need one, you'll get the best price on a battery in town. Shopping local at Manitoba Battery. But if you're conked out, the car's not starting at home, and you know you need one, save time, save money, save gas, give them a call. They'll deliver it to you anywhere in the city. And if you get that order in by 3 p.m., you'll get it the same day. Nobody services Winnipeggers like Manitoba Battery and saves you time and money like Donnie and his team does. Find out more online as well at manitobabattery.com. Give them a call or pop down to 1026 Logan Avenue. Our friends at Culligan Water, of course, are the water experts in town. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, drinking water systems, and citywide water delivery services, and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Make sure you get down there to 1200 Sargent Avenue. Give them a call at 694-5180 or find out everything that Culligan can do for you and your family online at drinkculligan.com. And hey, don't forget, big cheers to the new year to our friends at Canadian Club, Canada's favorite Canadian whiskey. Great deals on right now at Manitoba Liquor Marts. Lowest price you'll see all year on Canadian Club CC Reserve 12-year, and a brand new rye from the Beam Suntory family, Reichel Rye as well, on at big discounts. Check them both out right now at your local Manitoba Liquor Marts. All right, we've talked a lot of hockey today, but the CFL meetings are going on in Kananaskis, and it was a great opportunity after yesterday's show to connect one-on-one and discuss the Bombers' offseason with the guy making the moves. That, of course, is Bomber General Manager Kyle Walters, now on WST. Kyle, what's going on? It's great to talk to you again, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Yeah, things are good. Been, just got in this morning and doing the media circuit here, and we'll jump into meetings all night tonight and all day tomorrow, and back to Winnipeg Thursday.
You know, obviously we want to focus on the Bombers in this upcoming offseason and the season ahead, but I've got to ask you, I mean, from a general manager's perspective, what happens at these meetings? What are you guys up to?
It's rare for all of us to be in a room at the same time. So tonight with the head coaches and the general managers, we'll, football talk. The interesting one for me, so the collective bargaining agreement got done right before training camp last year. So any of the major tweaks and changes, they weren't able to implement them. So it will be nice tonight to get a refresher course on all of the changes to the CBA heading into this next year. And then just tomorrow will be the general state of the league from a business standpoint, and just sitting and listening and kind of hearing the direction of the league from the bigwigs.
What are the changes that are maybe most pertinent to your job as the general manager?
Well, some of the little things about, it was the big battle back and forth, from what I understand, during the negotiations of the number of Canadians on the field. So currently there's 7 Canadian starters on the field you play with, and there was talk about going down to 5 or 6, and that was the big battle. So it's very interesting that now they've sort of agreed that a couple Canadian starters can be replaced by Americans for a certain percentage of the game next year. So it maybe does affect your week-to-week roster in the sense that the old days of, if you're starting a Canadian, you have to have a backup Canadian, but moving forward, maybe you don't, because, maybe that Canadian starter on your roster can split time with an American. So little things like that how does it affect your roster and the globals plan and all of that. So just minor things that you head into the off season, maybe the way you tweak your roster, some slight changes, nothing major, but just little things that may affect the way you plan.
I'm glad you brought that up because, we've spent a lot of time talking about it, and it was a hot topic around CFL circles as we went in. The one question I have is, how is that going to be managed during the game? Like, I mean, you guys always know who the starters are, but I mean, does this fundamentally change? Is there going to need to be someone that's literally counting guys and knowing who's who every play?
That is an awesome question, because they brought that up when we were at the Grey Cup. We just had a quick little meeting, and that topic was brought up because, it's in any line of work, the way it is, the powers that be make decisions, and this is what when the two sides get together, and then it's like, well, how, to your point, how on earth is this going to actually be counted? And you're right, the CFL has to have a group of people in stands, and they're manually counting how many Canadians or who's on there and all that stuff. So it will be and obviously after the fact you can go back and double check your math, but to be accurate in game, they need to have an actual live count in the moment of snap counts for Canadians and Americans, which I'm glad I'm not responsible for that, because that seems like a fairly challenging situation every single play in a CFL game.
Yeah, logistics are everything in these sort of things, and that will be interesting to hear how all that turns out.
I agree.
Kyle, obviously it was a heartbreaker in the big game for the Blue Bombers, and since then you've re-signed a number of key, pillars of this football team. Willie Jefferson, of course, Stanley Bryant, most recently. Got to ask you about your negotiations with those guys. Is it? We've talked a lot about we're expecting this season to be almost an unfinished business tour for the Blue Bombers, considering the way things ended. Is that what you're getting from your key players that are coming back?
Yeah, you know what? After the year, we sat down with the coaches, and we lose a tough game, but we were that close to being 3 in a row. So organizationally, we feel we've still got we're getting a little older. We got a veteran group, and we are cognizant of that, but we're still very competitive. And these guys, somebody like Stanley, who's just keeps winning Outstanding Lineman of the Year every single year, and you just can't make change for the sake of making change. So these guys have earned the right to come back and we meet with the coaches and figure out, in your little positional group, who's the most important keys. And we put a lot of discussion into not just on-field performance, but who are the leaders, who are some of the guys that the fans might not particularly know as a statistical standout, but these are the guys that are every bit as important to the guys that are putting up the stats that I think we put more weight into those type of players in our organization than most. So, those guys we need to get back as well. And you try to weigh everything out of how we bring back the statistical leaders and the talent, as well as the kind of the behind the scenes leaders that lead in a different direction or a different method, I would say.
There's still plenty of work to be done for you and your office over the course of the off season. I mean, some very key players that still, hopefully from Bomber fans' perspective, will be re-signed. I mean, the likes of Jackson Jeffcoat, Nick Dembski, very important players. I mean, what can you tell us about how conversations are going on? Is it numerous conversations each and every day with a bunch of different representatives, or do you kind of knock them down one by one, and where's it all at?
Yeah, you know what, I'm quite optimistic some of the names that you're mentioning will get announced shortly. So we've had a lot of irons in the fire. I've changed after the 2021 Grey Cup, where it ended in mid-December, and then free agent, it was chaos with all the free agents. And I said, I can't possibly do that ever again. So just with such the short time. So I've made a concerted effort this year to start talks throughout the year with the agents on bye weeks, try to not make it a distraction and not announce many guys during the year. But we've had a lot of productive talks with a lot of the guys that you're mentioning. And, Nick's going to come in Friday when I get back, and I can't imagine, I think we're almost close. Jackson's not going to be far off. So we're I guess a long-winded answer, a lot of irons in the fire constantly, and I think they're all kind of coming together.
All that being said, you mentioned the team. When you have a team that's had the success and the way that you've kept it together, I mean, it did get older. And I mean, frankly, especially last year, I mean, it was probably the quietest free agency period for the Bombers because most of your work had been done to keep players. When you look ahead to CFL free agency this year, do you anticipate it being similar, or do you think you might be more active in tweaking the roster and changing it up through free agency?
No, I think it'll be similar. As I said, once you start putting the price points of, the guys that you mentioned aren't those veteran guys that are good they don't come cheap. So, by the time you've locked up all of your veteran leaders, there's not a lot left. And, I think back when we were just starting this and free agency was chaos for us. We'd be, overhauling your roster and you'd look down the road and Calgary would do nothing. Like that was every year. This was back, 5-6 years ago. And I would say, boy, we got to get to the point like Calgary where free agency comes and goes and they don't do anything because they've got the roster they need. They don't need many changes. And one of the things I'm most proud of, because as I said, I would say that all the time. And it was back then, Hustler, where, I would have agents just say, Kyle, stop. We're not coming there. Like, it doesn't matter. You're embarrassing yourself. Don't quit offering us money. We'll never come to Winnipeg. I remember those days. And now it's, begging players to come here. And now we've come full circle to, the way I wanted it, which was the Calgary method of, you don't need to, free agency should be quiet. You don't need to massively overhaul your roster when you've got a good roster. And we do.
Well, and a part of that is the success you guys are having on the field. I'd imagine another big part of that is what players say to other players about what Winnipeg and this organization has become. And also what the Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans have been bringing to the game in and game out. I mean, we had talked before that, the Banjo Bowl was the big event of the year, and you look to have the other games maybe come close to that. I'm sure you'd agree that last season was, every game was an event. Every game was amazing, and you saw the crowds grow. How much has that helped what you're trying to do in the offseason when you get guys to sign on the dotted line to be in blue and gold?
Yeah, you're right. If we're having players stay for less money, truth be told, over the past few years, and understanding that the playoff money and the things that you're talking about, playing in Winnipeg and playing in front of it's hard. You can't put a price on that stuff. You know what I mean? And the Ron Lancaster always used to say, every single year, Ron would say, after the season, he'd say, just be careful. The grass isn't always greener, and we got a pretty good thing here. And that's very, very true that, it's hard to put a monetary dollar value on quality of life and quality of work experience. And that is what we have in our organization right now. And you're seeing it, that the guys want to be here. It's right from Wade through Mike, all the way down through the coaches. We do things the way I think it's supposed to be done. And then the fans, it's awesome in our league to be able to play in front of fans like that every single day. And yeah, you and I talked about it. It was the $1 million question of, how do we replicate the Banjo Bowl? How can we have such a wild environment that one time a year? And it's like, well, this year it seemed like there was 9 of those wild environments, and it was awesome. Or 10, I guess, with the playoffs. So we've done it.
Yeah, well, you have, and I think that's only helping on all sides of the game. And I can tell you from listening to people in Winnipeg Sports Talk each and every day, can't wait to get back to that stadium and see you guys try and make another run at another Grey Cup. Kyle Walters, Blue Bomber General Manager, with us. Hey, listen, if players aren't playing, if they're in the CFL, it seems most want to be here in Winnipeg. Obviously, the NFL is always a threat to players. And we found out one, this I think maybe for some people was a little off the radar, and Tyrell Ford signing with the Packers. Did that one catch you off guard at all? And what do you make of that opportunity for a young player in your organization?
So here's what happens with the NFL. So first of all, for a player, the NFL each team has to send a request to me. So once the request, just to meet with Terrell and work them out. So once these requests started getting up to 7 or 8 teams, you're like, well, there's some genuine interest there. So once you get that many workouts, someone's going to offer him a contract, and it was Green Bay. And I spoke to the people in Green Bay, and I said, just curiosity, walk me through the process, because Terrell didn't play much for us this year. And I said, I'm certain you guys weren't watching him cover kicks or punts, which is where he did, the majority of his work this year. And just to let everybody know, here's organizationally, here's the way the NFL works. Certain teams where they went back, and the Green Bay Packers looked at every pro day and looked at the guys who weren't in the NFL. And Terrell Ford's pro day numbers are NFL quality, like upper percentile. The kid's a phenomenal athlete. He was a virtual unknown coming from Waterloo, showed up at the University of Buffalo pro day, and people were like, who is this kid? And just blew the numbers off the table, tested like an NFL player. So now they go circle back and they do their due diligence and say, where are all these guys that tested like this? And Terrell Ford played a year of professional football. He's a year older. He's a great kid. And it was literally based on his performance on his height, weight, speed, and that he's a young man with a huge upside. There's zero risk for the Green Bay Packers to sign him and give him a chance, because, as I said, athletically, he tests and looks like an NFL defensive back.
Well, you know where I'm going with this other one, because I think there was a guy that did have a lot of playing time as a rookie, and that was Dalton Schoen.
Yep.
What an amazing season he had. I think everyone expected there'd be plenty of NFL interest. What are you hearing on Dalton, and what are the chances that he's back in blue and gold next season, at least at this point in your mind?
And here's the interesting difference. So I just explained the Terrell Ford scenario from an NFL team standpoint. Dalton's had some NFL workouts, but everybody knows Dalton Schoen in the NFL. He played in the Big 12, played Kansas State, had NFL opportunities. So every NFL organization has a scouting report on Dalton Schoen. They have all the numbers. They know everything about him. They know nothing about Terrell Ford. So Terrell Ford was the enigma that they're going to give a question mark. So what's going on with Dalton right now, they know all the numbers, so they're going to go back and study all the film and say, did we miss anything on this guy? How is it that he didn't have success or given the opportunity to have success in the NFL? He goes up to the CFL and has an unbelievable season. Now, are the reasons that he had success in the CFL, was it the waggle? Was it the sitting in the zones, using his brain, all that stuff? And are his skills that we're seeing on film in the CFL going to translate to the NFL? And that's what they're doing right now. So I'm not sure, as I said, but it's very, very, very different between the Terrell Ford and the Dalton Schoen, because they said they know everything about Dalton Schoen from when he came out, and now they're going to sit and watch all the game film, whereas with Terrell, they watch no game film. And they'll just have to see if Dalton, they think he can, what did they miss, and does he get another opportunity?
No, that is a really interesting answer, and it does make a lot of sense because Ford was somewhat off the radar. Where a guy like Schoen that played at K-State, there would be plenty of eyes on all of those games as they go through.
100%.
Kyle, where are things at with the global initiative right now? And I have to ask you, and maybe this is I'm too focused on the Bombers, but you think of Hansen and. Hell, Les Morrow was just playing in the Rice Bowl or whatever a couple weeks ago, playing back in Japan in the offseason. There's a guy that loves football.
He sure does.
What has been the key to the success of the Bombers, maybe as opposed to other teams, with the guys that you've come in that have really made an impact at times when you've needed them?
Well, you know what? It's like when we took the same philosophy that we in the global draft that we do in the Canadian draft. You got to draft some guys that are going to be given an opportunity to get on the field. And there's no use drafting a global receiver because he's not beating out Dalton Schoen or any, because they have to play for Americans like that. They can't play for Canadians. So skill wise, offensively, it just makes no sense. So we focused on, all right, well, let's try to find some globals that can cover some kicks and maybe start like we do with the sort of your later round Canadian draft picks is, all right, let's draft these guys. Let's get them some reps on special teams and let's get them comfortable in the CFL and see how they go. And so it's just, I think we've drafted guys and given them an opportunity to win a spot on the game day roster, because certain guys you see drafted, they wouldn't have a chance. So, we'll take that same approach this year. And can we find guys that can maybe help on special teams? And, there'll be a few more Australian punters in this draft once again, to look through. And, we'll see. But as I said, we try to, and with Richie, here's what Richie does on defense, which is very unique in our league. And I think he does an awesome job going, and it makes, the continuity of our team and the team morale particularly in that defensive room. If you're dressed, Richie doesn't care if you're German, Japanese, you're from Waterloo, or you're from University of Texas. You're going to play. You know what I mean? He's going to get you out there, and you're going to take a few snaps a game. And you saw it last year. Some of those guys that get out there, they give Richie all they got, and it's, as I said, it's really good in for what we do as a team. And then Richie and the defensive staff does an awesome job of making sure every single guy in that defensive room, regardless of where they're from, regardless of their pedigree, that they get to help us play defense on game days.
Kyle, maybe the biggest re-signing of the offseason wasn't one of the guys we've talked about, but is, of course, the leader of your football club, and that's Mike O'Shea. I've just got to ask you about how that comes to be. Does Osh have an agent? Does he do it himself? Is it with you and Wade? Is that done? And maybe beyond that, just, your thoughts on having Mike back for another 3 years to lead this football club.
Yeah, first and foremost, it starts at the top, and we talk about continuity, and Mike's built the culture that you're seeing, and all the things that I'm talking about with what that you and I have discussed about the culture and the team and the veteran status and the continuity and everybody on defense playing. It starts with Mike, because that's what he believes in his philosophy. And yeah, Mike Mike just never wanted to talk about his contract, and they'll just, him and Wade sit down at the end of the year and just sort it out. And, there wasn't really much doubt that it would get done. And he just prefers to kind of not deal with it until he's ready.
I know from your perspective, that's certainly one hole that you didn't want to fill. And it's great to have O'Shea back being the guy calling the shots. Kyle, before we go, I mean, you've got a job that is a 12-month-a-year job. The phone's always on, but I've got to ask you, do you get a time to get away at all? Is there a vacation for it? And how realistic is that?
It's funny. Jack and I were just talking about that, looking at our calendars to see when can we and the kids get away and do something. And you start, February's free agency. You got all the draft work, and then you're into early March is the regional combine, and then you got your main combine. So maybe March break in Winnipeg falls like the last week of March, early April. So we're maybe targeting kind of after the CFL draft combines, kind of before before the final draft meetings get set in that kind of 2-week window, end of March, early April. Hopefully we can find some time.
Well, listen, you certainly earned it. Can't wait for the upcoming season. All the best to you and the gang out at the CFL winter meetings. We'll look forward to some of those announcements from our pal DC coming up on some of the guys that we've been talking about, fingers crossed. And
100%, you'll hear it.
All the best to you, Kyle. Thanks for doing this, and have a great offseason. We'll chat soon. All right, awesome chat with Kyle Walters. Really enjoyed that. Some really neat insight from Walters, especially that business, about Trey Ford and Dalton Schoen. I'll tell you what, one thing I did leave that conversation with Kyle Walters is maybe a little more optimism that Dalton Schoen might be back here taking it to the house again from Zach Caleros in blue and gold next season. Thanks again to Kyle Walters for making the time for us today on WST. All right, we've got a few things to get to. Want to get to Coolbet lines. First of all, got to thank Nick and Nikki DQ for their great support at WST. You know them well. They've been with us since day one, and one of the most popular sponsors of WST for obvious reasons, because it's the best. 4 locations: DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's. Pop by, tell them WST sent you. Try one of those great blizzards. And if you haven't, Blizzard cakes, ice cream cakes, unreal. Blizzard cakes, taking it to a whole nother level. If you want to order one, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll custom make it for you however you want for a quick and easy pickup at any of the Nick and Nikki DQs. When you go in to grab it, try one of those stack burgers as well. And our friends at Little Brown Jug are ready for January. They've got an amazing Good Times variety pack right now containing 4 all-new beers, including a stout, a rye extra special bitter, Kolsch, and West Coast IPA. Grab it and try them all at Little Brown Jug, your liquor marts, or anywhere that sells good beer. And hey, are you participating in Dry January? Try Bright Water, Winnipeg's only local sparkling water made with high quality, all natural extracts and filtered dechlorinated water. Bright Water is 0 proof, 0 sweetener, and 0 calorie, so you can consume consciously. Order from littlebrownjug.ca or bright, BRITE-water.com. All right, let's get Remo back in here. And by the way, any of you discussing trades in chat, Michael Remis is not on the market. Untouchable here on WST. Remo, how about that chat with Kyle Walters? Man, that was interesting.
Really cool hearing him talk about, why Dalton Schoen may not get the looks that you think, that he may have gotten, and why Ford got signed yesterday to Green Bay. Seems like they broke it down really nicely that Ford, hey, he's got good workout numbers, and they want to see how that translate with Dalton Schoen. It's like, okay, we've already worked him out, and it didn't work. So I don't know. I thought Dalton Schoen was worthy of a look. Maybe they don't think he doesn't have the speed or whatever, but hey, you look pretty damn good here, leading the league in receiving. Kind of surprising that wouldn't get a contract.
We can only hope he gets overlooked by the National Football League and comes back to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Some great Bomber news, though. And again, all our Bomber reports here brought to you by our friends at Princess Auto. But the Hardrick Hop is back. Bombers today, as Kyle sort of alluded to, had a few deals done. Jamarcus Hardrick is back with a 1-year extension. The Nebraska product returns to the Bombers for a 7th season. Started 17 games last year at right tackle for the Bombers and part of an offense that finished second in offensive points, first in touchdowns, second in rushing yards, while yielding the second fewest sacks. Of course, Stanley Bryant gets a lot of the accolades, and hey, 3 top offensive lineman awards in 4 years will do that. But Hardrick's a huge part of this Bomber offense, and great to have him back as well. Before we get to the line, Remo, we should mention we've been talking a lot about All-Stars. Obviously, Peter DeBoer is going to be the head coach of the Central Division in Florida. Josh Morrissey will be there. Continue your civic duty, voting for those Jets 10 times a day at NHL.com. But Remo, we found out who's going to be representing the Manitoba Moose in the AHL All-Star game amongst a number of, I would say, worthy possibilities.
Yeah, we kind of overlooked talk about all this NHL All-Star, but there's also the AHL All-Star game, and Declan Chisholm, defenseman, who, he's played a couple games here with the Jets over the last couple years. I thought he's looked pretty good, and he's been named to the All-Star Classic February 5 and 6 in Laval. Second on the Moose with 22 points in 30 games, and he's got 19 assists, which lead the Moose, and 3 power play goals as well. What is he, 8th in points for a defenseman? So having a great season down there. You wonder if he'd ever get a look here, but it just seems there's so many defensemen ahead of him. And I thought, what was that game last year? He came in, he played pretty well, but
played very well. Chisholm I think is going to play in the National Hockey League. I think he'll play here in Winnipeg. The big question is when that will happen. And how this blue line is going to look next year. I mean, you've got young players like Ville Heinola, Dylan Sandberg that are already sort of in or on the cusp of being in the lineup on a regular basis. Logan Stanley's status, I think, is very much up in the air considering how little he's played so far this year. But those contracts of the big 5 up top are still carrying through into next season as well. So still very, very crowded on the Jet blue line and the Moose blue line as well.
It's funny, Chisholm. I feel like this guy's been around for a while. But he's only 22 years old, Huss. Although, hey, his birthday is tomorrow, Declan Chisholm. So he's turning 23 tomorrow. And, he had some great offensive numbers, 69 points. Really nice number in his last season in Peterborough. That's 19-20. And he's in his third season with the Moose now. I don't know. He's just so blocked here. There, as you said, those guys are on contract for next year, so I don't know how this guy gets any playing time in Winnipeg. So if you've been waiting for a trade for a defenseman for a forward at some point, I don't know, is he a guy that they would move? Because where would he ever play with the Jets? There's so many guys ahead of him. Like, who's getting moved here?
No, listen, it is a very, very good point. So we'll see how that all shakes out. We'll have to get Fink on coming up over the next couple days. And I guess not this weekend, but next weekend, January 21st and January 22nd, Texas is here to take on the Manitoba Moose. And we've got some tickets, so we'll be doing a contest on that. We're going to do that through the website. I got that up next week.
I got to make it on our website, but we'll have some tickets away.
Pay attention to that. We'll mention it here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. And hey, just before we quickly hit the latest NFL news, don't forget tonight, if you're no Jets game on the slate, if you're looking to get out and see an incredible, incredible hockey game, I think we've got one coming up at the Ice Cave tonight. Winnipeg Ice, Seattle Thunderbirds. Obviously, we don't get the same sort of information and coverage on these teams on game day, but a good chance that Zach Ostapchuk, the big acquisition by the Winnipeg Ice, makes his debut. And we could very well see Jets first-rounder Brad Lambert make his debut for the visitors, the Seattle Thunderbirds, as he was assigned there earlier this year. We'll have 6 players likely from Canada's national junior team that just won the gold medal in the game tonight. And I would imagine a number of Winnipeg Ice players that weren't on the team that'll maybe come in with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder heading into tonight's game. Actually, we'll see what the lines are on that one as well coming up over at Coolbet. I'm just going to give some quick NFL news and notes. And the best news, Damar Hamlin discharged from hospital in Buffalo. I have to tell you, I mean, considering how dire things looked, what was it, 9 days ago? It seems like nothing short of a miracle that this young man has been discharged from the hospital today.
It's an unbelievable story that he had cardiac arrest on the field, was given CPR, taken to the hospital, and now he left the hospital in Cincinnati, went to Buffalo Hospital, got discharged. Absolutely amazing, remarkable story. What fantastic work by the trainers there in Buffalo who were able to recognize the situation in a split second and go right into action. You get chills. And it was like Monday night, like the biggest game of the year on Monday Night Football, the two best teams.
Two of the best teams.
What?
Two of the best
Two of
teams.
the three best teams in the league, right, Hustler? Two of the three best
in the
teams.
AFC.
Crazy. So, I mean, the story keeps getting better and better. Oh, yeah, and then you have everyone donating to his GoFundMe. Who knows what's going to happen with that now?
That toy drive, over $8 million there. So there has been some positives, but the most important thing is the health of the young man. Hamlin discharged today. As far as the playoffs go for the weekend, the Dolphins have ruled Tua out. I don't think there's any question that he should not be playing, and I think there's some major questions about his future after the 3 concussions this year. And it sounds like Skylar Thompson is going to be the Miami quarterback going into Buffalo to take on the Bills. That line has moved big time. We'll tell you about that in a minute with that move. And Reno, this is something that I think I've mentioned this a few times. I've been very skeptical as to what's happening behind the scenes with Lamar Jackson. There had been some rumors that he hadn't entirely been all into his rehab from this injury. Of course, the elephant in the room is the fact that the Ravens have not been able to sign him to an extension, and Lamar Jackson is still not practicing, and Huntley is not throwing either for the Ravens. You'd have to think that it would take, speaking of miracles, a miracle for them without their top 2 quarterbacks to beat the Bengals in the jungle on the weekend.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why they wouldn't just give him whatever he wanted. This guy's an amazing quarterback. It doesn't make you see everyone else getting paid, and I don't know if that's why he's not playing or if he's hurt. I'm not sure, but you're down your 2 quarterbacks. It's funny, look at the matchups this weekend. You talk about Miami with their 3rd string, Skylar Thompson. I see someone rating chat, Jeff Cabell, Skylar who? And
exactly.
I mean, you didn't watch that riveting, what was it, a 9-6 game with
it actually ended 11-6 with the safety on the final play, which screwed anybody that had Miami plus 3.5.
I was gonna say
Jets plus 3.5.
Almost screwed me in fantasy because I had Garrett Wilson lose his 100-yard bonus with the back. I don't know. I didn't actually see the play. I just saw that he lost 16 yards on and then lateral. And then, then you have Baltimore against his edge. So 2 of the games, you're already into lower quarterbacks. That's tough scene. I know the line has moved. Was it -7 yesterday? Now it's -8.5 for the Bengals.
Yeah, we'll get to those in just a second. One other thing, and this is going to be fun. Let's quickly go through this. The NFL desperately trying to maintain some sort of relevancy and interest in the Pro Bowl has changed the Pro Bowl, of course, to a flag football game this year. And I can't say that doesn't make sense considering how violent the game is and how little does the Pro Bowl actually mean. But today, the NFL announced all 8 skills competitions for its revamped Pro Bowl on Wednesday. 5 of the events will be on Feb 2 at the Vegas Raiders headquarters. They'll be televised but not open to the public. And the other are on Feb 5th at Allegiant Stadium, and tickets are on for sale. So here we got a dodgeball tournament, a 3-part elimination contest called the Lightning Round, a golf ball longest drive contest, a quarterback passing challenge in the first round of the best catch game, the stadium contest of the finals of the best catch event, a relay race through an obstacle course, a special teams competition, and a strength contest using first down chains. I'll be honest, I think I probably will check some of this out, and I am totally cool with them doing stupid things like a long drive contest involving some of the stars of the NFL, because the bottom line is we don't want these guys getting hurt any more than they do through the regular season. I have no idea who's going to be in it, and Geez, maybe we can get some odds at Coolbet on the dodgeball tournament, Rima, once we know who's in it.
Yeah, can you bet on this? Is there fantasy for it?
There has to be. There has to be.
If they can find a way to incorporate like a DraftKings lineup or Coolbet odds on longest drive, yeah, I think that's fun because we always like betting on what hardest shot and 3-point competition. Did they used to do like a skills competition where they have the quarterbacks throw into a target and they'd have receivers with catching balls? I remember they did some QB challenge or something. So
I think you said there's going to be a kicking competition as well, like punting into like a tic-tac-toe or something like that.
It's like it's called kick-tac-toe. Each team's kicker, punter, and long snapper compete in a giant tic-tac-toe competition to showcase their skills.
The long snappers getting a little bit of love at the Pro Bowl. About time.
Yes.
Big event for the long snappers. And I don't know what they're going to have. I would love to see them bring out, much like we do the hardest shot. Like I'd love to see in a controlled climate to see the best kickers like trying to hit 70-yard bombs or something like that. Maybe going back and forth like a game of horse, if you will, with the kickers. That would be neat. Anyways, if you're into the Pro Bowl, there's a little bit of info for you. As far as the lines go right now, let's get over to Coolbet and see what's cooking. Niners, 9.5-point favorites still against the Seahawks. Charger line, it sounds like Mike Williams is going to be able to play. Charger number's gone up slightly, -1.5. They're favored, -125 on the money line. That's up from -118 yesterday. The Jags yesterday were even money. They're now +107 and a 1.5-point home underdog. And the biggest line movement today, and that comes off the news that we just heard about Tua and Teddy Bridgewater, is the Dolphins are now 12.5-point underdogs against the Buffalo Bills in the game at noon on Sunday. Vikings still 3-point favorites, and the Bengals now from 7.5 to 8.5-point favorites against the Ravens, as could be two teams with third-string quarterbacks playing in the playoffs this weekend. And then, of course, the Monday Night Football game. This one's come down slightly. I saw last night it was -3 for the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys now -2.5-point favorites on the road in Tampa in the Monday Nighter, looking to beat Tampa Bay for the Tom Brady for the first time in franchise history.
Yeah, Monday Night Football on ESPN with Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I think that might have been one of the biggest offseason acquisitions, ESPN getting Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. The games just seem, they're getting better games now because of them. I think it's a much better broadcast as well. And I don't know, can Tom Brady keep it going here on Monday night? He's at home. He hasn't looked great at times this year, but maybe this is one of the games where he was able to find it and hit Chris Godwin, hit Mike Evans for some points. Because look, Dak, he's at times this year he's turned the ball over as well. So I think that's the marquee. Is that the marquee game of the weekend, the Monday night on the Super Wild Card?
You know what? I would think so. I mean, some of these, I'm really looking forward to this Chargers-Jags game. I mean, to me, that's the most interesting game. It's the closest game by point spread. Some of these other games we expect to be real ass kickings. I mean, that Niner game, 9.5 point. You got a 12-point favorite, an 8.5-point favorite. But yeah, to me, Bucks, Cowboys, Giants, Vikings, Jags, Chargers, the most interesting games on the board this week. By the way, if you're at Coolbet, you can get futures for, everyone, win the AFC, win the NFC, win the Super Bowl, and some interesting specials for the wild card round, including the highest scoring team and the lowest scoring team. All the odds are up there. Buffalo scheduled to be the favorite for the highest scoring team, and their opponent, the Miami Dolphins, the lowest scoring team, which explains that 12.5-point spread. Tonight, the NHL, 4 games. Capitals -177 faves in Philly against the Flyers. Leafs, don't believe Austin Matthews playing tonight, -181 for Toronto, home to the Nashville Predators. Edmonton needs a win. Jack Campbell's starting. Stewie Skins is off having a baby. Oilers -253 to break their losing streak in Anaheim against the Ducks. And the LA Kings, a big favorite, -206 at home against the San Jose Sharks. And just quickly, we don't normally hit junior hockey, but we do have this massive game tonight between the Seattle Thunderbirds and the Winnipeg Ice. And yes, you can bet on that too if you like. And this number's come down a bit. I saw it earlier today. It was minus 167 for the Ice, plus 125 for the Thunderbirds. Ice now minus 154 favorites. And the Seattle Thunderbirds plus 116. What'll be interesting is there's a lot of players coming back and playing for the first time since returning to the team. And again, still waiting on official word, but for anyone that goes out to the Ice Cave tonight, we'll be hoping we might get a chance to see Brad Lambert in his first game in the Western League game.
Yeah, that'll be pretty cool. It seems like it's going to be a great atmosphere tonight at the Ice Cave / Wayne Fleming Arena. I don't know if you knew this, just on that Leafs Ducks game. No, Leafs Nashville game tonight. Sorry, it's Oilers Ducks. Austin Matthews, he's not playing. Sheldon Keefe says something that's been bothering him for a while. I saw some speculation that the Leafs are going with that they're exercising load management here in the NHL. I'm not sure. He hasn't missed a game this year. Production hasn't really been what it was last year. Leafs locked into that playoff round against Tampa.
Oh yeah, I mean, put the tickets on sale right now. The Leafs are playing Tampa in the first round of the playoffs. I mean, we pretty much you can set dates if they want for both Tampa and Toronto. We'll see who gets home ice. Probably Toronto. I don't think anyone's catching Boston. And sure as hell, no one in that division is catching Tampa or Toronto. It is hilarious that we're at the halfway point of the season. We know exactly what one of the matchups are going to be in the first round.
Yeah, I think that we can agree then that this playoff format that's where you locked in your division is absolutely stupid. And because, hey, again, the teams are locked in, and you have two teams. Are they better than the teams in the Metro? They're pretty even, but
you know what? I'm glad you brought this up right now. Let's just get to these the conference standings. And what would the matchups be right now the midway point? And again, some teams have played a couple more games than the others. We'll just go with the points as far as points percentage.
Or do you want me to go points percentage or point?
Well, you know what? All right, let's do points
Toronto,
percentage.
If you go by points, Toronto would be playing Tampa anyways, but Tampa's played 2 less games. I'll do points percentage, should be fair.
So it would be Boston against Pittsburgh, Toronto against Washington, Carolina and the Rangers in New Jersey and Tampa Bay. I'd rather have those matchups than the ones that we'll get through the division for sure.
You just have the best matchups early instead of having them in the conference final because you have some of these stacked divisions.
We want to create rivalries, Reem. We're trying to create some rivalries here.
It's the most idiotic playoff format.
Head on down to the West or the West. Let's see what would be happening with the Jets.
So by points percentage now, they're in 4th. They're behind Vegas, Seattle, and Dallas. They'd be playing LA, who's pretty good.
After that loss last night. So it'd be Winnipeg, LA, Kraken, Wild, Vegas, Nashville, Dallas, Calgary. I'll say this.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be shaken up a little bit. The Colorado Avalanche, we know the Avalanche are going to get in there. So who will be a team that gets bounced? And I still think the Edmonton Oilers have to have a run in them. But, man, if they miss the playoffs this year, after what they were able to do last year, that would be just an epic organizational failure. Would probably cost Woodcroft his job. And would really have some. You hate to think about this because obviously we've got friends in Edmonton and it's great having those players on Canadian teams. We get to see them so much. But if they regress to the point where they miss the playoffs this year with the expectations that they had, you wonder what that does to the future of some of their top players wanting to stick around past their contracts.
Well, I think the management has to put an all-around capable team. They've been talking about getting a defenseman for years. They've been talking about getting depth scoring for years. Look at the distribution of scoring on this team. Like, yeah, they lost Evander Kane, and that's a big loss. But, hey, the Jets lost Ehlers, and we're just fine. But
the Oilers have like 5 guys a night that play less than 10 minutes.
And
look, David's killing penalties. I mean,
their bottom 6 has. Like, look at the goals from the bottom 6. It's pretty bonkers. Here, I'll pull it up right now. You got Draisaitl, Nuge, McDavid here at the top, then Hyman, and you got Barry, Nurse, Bouchard, and then Kane. Kane is still leading Like he's played 14 games. He's leading every other guy in points. He's got 13 points in 14 games. There's Yamamoto, 11:30, McLeod, 10:29, Derek Ryan. Clem Costin's actually been like decent.
Yeah,
Yarvi 9
goals.
and 42. Janmark. Man,
Oh, poor Yessi. You know, he's such a popular guy. A lot of people really like him, but it's just not happening for him right now. I think a change of scenery would do him wonders, whether it's in the National Hockey League, potentially maybe even going back to Europe. But I'd love to see him get another shot somewhere else before his NHL career is done. Dylan Holloway's a guy that they thought they'd be getting a little bit more from. He's got just 5 points on the season. And Warren Foegele, that Foegele contract not looking too good. 4 goals, 29 games so far. Listen, it's going to be Connor and Leon doing it again, dragging them to the playoffs if they do it. But they're not in a good spot right now. And Jack Campbell's playing these next 2 games as Stuart Skinner goes and has a baby. So lots of pressure on Jack Campbell. Has been such a disappointment so far this season. Again, just to wrap the Coolbet segment, if you haven't played a Coolbet before, use the promo code WST when you sign up and make your first deposit for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. Remo, what's going on tonight? No Jets. We've got one Jets day off before back-to-back. So how will you be occupying yourself?
Oh, I was gonna watch the other games tonight. Who do we got here? Just putting my bets in. So I'll watch this Edmonton Anaheim late game. Or San Jose, LA. I like that late game. I watched a bit of Sharks Coyotes last night. The camera angle at the Coyotes arena is so bad, really hard to watch.
I haven't watched almost anything. Why would anyone watch a Coyotes game, to be honest, this year?
Well, I might have had like
fantasy
purposes. I mean, yeah, Sharks kind of not exactly moving the needle, but hey, got some players in fantasy. I don't know. I do like watching Erik Karlsson. I like watching the Sharks power play one. Timo Meier is pretty good. So I've watched a lot of Sharks. I like West Coast games. But yeah, I think that's fair comment. But the Coyotes arena camera is terrible. It's hard to watch.
MC Stormy and Phyllis, thanks for pumping up the chat to get on the likes. Yeah, if you haven't already, folks, please give us that thumbs up. We'd love to get to 200 again. We've got a great streak going right now. And I knew it would be a little quieter today because people were bummed out from the game last night and maybe didn't want to talk about it. Hopefully they'll watch later on and hit that thumbs up. But as always, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that red subscribe button for the latest WST content in your feed anytime you pull up YouTube. And tell a friend about WST as well and how they can join us live on YouTube or just check the podcast at their convenience. Huge thanks to everyone that joined us today. Great job by Remis. This was an awesome show. Kyle Walters, Marty Biron, Murat. We'll get ready for these next couple games. Scott Billick is on the road. He'll join us from Buffalo tomorrow. We'll get Brandon Rowicki's thoughts. Probably get a little bit more on the National Football League playoffs coming up this weekend. Oh, and for you lock shoppers, first golf picks of the year, head on over at Lock Shop Bets on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. If you're one of our first 1,000 subscribers, you'll be in the mix for a $1,000 giveaway that's burning a hole in Dusty's pocket. I'm going to try and get down to that hockey game tonight at the Ice Cave to see Brad Lambert, hopefully, Seattle Thunderbirds against Zach and the Winnipeg Ice. Should be a great one tonight. Of course, tickets on sale. You can go to the Winnipeg Ice website if you haven't already to book yourself in for that. And we move on. Tomorrow, Jets and Buffalo Sabres. Friday, Jets and Pittsburgh Penguins. Jets going to want to nip this one in the bud, get back to their model, their structure, and get back to winning hockey games. But they'll have an ornery Buffalo team that's lost a couple this week at home, awaiting for the Winnipeg Jets. We'll break it all down tomorrow. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Folks, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow on WST.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.